Chapter 332. All of this had happened too suddenly. It was so sudden that even Li Xianyang could not react, not to mention his 3 disciples and Jill. Although the 6 of them were all in the spirit pulse realm, under the joint attack of Leng Shiqi and his 3 dark lightning envoys, as well as the experts of the 6 great families, they immediately fell into a dead end. And the reason for all of this was the caravan that came to Ai Ming Mountain, which was actually a team of experts from the 6 great families. Leng Shiqi calculated that Li Xianyang would definitely not let this caravan go, so he used a lack of manpower as an excuse to transfer away a portion of Li Xianyang's fighting strength. The battle at the foot of the mountain was actually caused by Leng Shiqi and the rest killing Ah Chang and the others. After that, Thousand-Face Mask disguised everyone and put on the Profound Yang Sect's clothes to prepare for a sneak attack on Li Xianyang. As the main force, Sun Gang's city lord naturally disguised himself as Ah Chang, the only one who could get close to Li Xianyang. Thus, the scene in front of them happened. Once they started fighting, Sun Gang's disguise also disappeared, and Li Xianyang immediately recognized him. Li Xianyang was shocked. "Sun Gang. Why are you here?" Sun Gang roared, "Humph, you secretly colluded with the Zhu Lu country. Your crime is unforgivable, everyone should kill you." Sun Gang clenched his fists, and the clothes on his body immediately flew off, only to see 8 sparkling spirit veins on his arms, as well as dozens of resplendent stars. Those were the spirit cavities. Sun Gang's cultivation technique was obviously very extreme. He gathered all the spirit veins and spirit cavities on his arms. This way, his fist technique would be boundless. Sun Gang's fists collided, and a loud boom sounded out, following which a scarlet-red sun appeared. The entire Ai Ming Mountain was enveloped in waves of heat. Li Xianyang roared, his palms facing the sky, and the surrounding spirit energy of heaven and earth frantically gathered. Pieces of golden light constantly surged, and a golden sun rose in the sky. This was Li Xianyang's foundation, the glorious sun, mysterious sun palm. At the peak of Ai Ming Mountain, 2 suns appeared. The other spirit pulse stage spirit cultivators who were fighting all dodged, while Leng Shiqi stared at Jill. Everyone here had to die, but Jill couldn't die. He had to capture him alive. Jill had been ambushed in the first place. The Leng Shiqi inky jade sword was still engraved with 63 demonic patterns, and it was currently sweeping over with a violent sword aura. Gil pulled out a pair of strange scimitars and was about to face the enemy, but Leng Shiqi's eyes suddenly flashed with colorful light, and Gil's action of pulling out the scimitars suddenly stopped. In less than a breath's time, he woke up, but Leng Shiqi's sword was already close to him. Gil barely had enough time to block the attack. As the sword light swept past, the inky jade sword directly shattered the scimitar and even chopped off Gil's entire right arm. Leng Shiqi's sword shook, and over 100 invisible invading meridian sword chi shot out, instantly opening numerous wounds on Jill's body. At the same time, over 100 sword chi entered his body and sealed his meridians. Leng Shiqi took advantage of the situation and directly knocked Jill unconscious with his palm. Then, he pointed out a finger, and in an instant, blood chi soared into the sky, thunder raged, and a thunderous bloody light shot towards another Zhu Lu country person. That person was currently surrounded by several people and was already struggling. How could he have the energy to block Leng Shiqi's thunder blood sky finger? A thunderous blood line flashed, and in the blink of an eye, that person's head exploded. The few people who were attacking were stunned. They had joined forces to attack this person, but they had only injured him. Leng Shiqi had actually killed him in an instant. What kind of strength was this? They turned around and saw that even Jill had been subdued by Leng Shiqi. They couldn't help but sigh at Leng Shiqi's strength. After Leng Shiqi killed this person, he didn't care about them anymore. Instead, he rushed towards the 3 spirit pulse realm cultivators of the Xianyang sect. The 3 of them were all direct disciples of Li Xianyang and must die. However, just as he rushed over, he heard a loud explosion. It was Sun Gang and Li Xianyang's suns colliding. The entire Ai Ming Mountain was suddenly enveloped by an endless golden and red light, followed by a terrifying wave of spirit energy, causing everyone to retreat. Leng Shiqi quietly opened his Byakugan, and in his vision, he instantly discovered that Li Xuanyang's strength was about to collapse. Sure enough, after 2 breaths of time, the red sun completely swallowed the golden sun, and Li Xuanyang spat out another mouthful of blood. If the two of them were at their peak, Li Xuanyang would be stronger than Sun Gang, but he was attacked by Sun Gang at close range and was heavily injured. From that moment onwards, Li Xuanyang already knew the result. However, when he saw that Jill had been subdued and his 3 disciples were on the verge of death, his eyes immediately widened. Jill had fallen into the hands of others, and that was proof of his betrayal. His Xianyang sect would not be able to escape the fate of being destroyed. As a sect leader, Li Xianyang quickly understood that this was all because of one person, and that was Leng Shiqi. He stared at Leng Shiqi and said fiercely, You actually weren't controlled by the mind-controlling goo. You've been pretending all along. Leng Shiqi sneered, That's right. How did you do it? Even so, Li Xianyang still found it hard to believe. Leng Shiqi said, The dead don't need to know so much, City Lord Sun. Sun Gang raised his huge fist, and a terrifying aura erupted like a volcano. It seemed like Sun Gang was ready to use his killing move. At this time, Li Xianyang laughed strangely, Do you think you can defeat me like this? As soon as he finished his words, his whole body burst out with a strong bloody light. He actually began to burn all his essence blood. Not only that, but Li Xianyang had also done something completely unexpected. His body moved as fast as a flash of light, and he turned around and rushed down the cliff of Ai Ming Mountain. Although Ai Ming Mountain was only a small mountain, if he fell down, he would definitely die even if he was an expert in the late stage of Spirit Aperture realm. However, Li Xianyang seemed to have other means. He left behind a ruthless sentence, Leng Shiqi, Sun Gang, just you wait. When I break through to Gang's spirit realm, it will be the time of your death. Sun Gang waited and watched Li Xianyang fall down the cliff. He did not dare to jump down, but he knew that he could not get the first Origin 9 Aperture Crystal. In addition, he had to be careful of Li Xuanyang's revenge in the future. In a fit of anger, he killed 3 of Li Xuanyang's personal disciples in an instant. The remnant souls of several spiritual pulse realm cultivators benefited Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi knew that Sun Gang was furious. He said, Don't worry, City Lord Sun. Li Xianyang is seriously injured and has burned his essence blood. He can't run far. I will report this matter later. He will be executed soon. If we can recover the first Origin 9 Aperture Crystal, we will definitely give it to City Lord Sun. Sun Gang was silent for a moment. Although he was angry, he knew that there was no problem with the arrangement tonight. And from what Li Xianyang said just now, Leng Shiqi had put himself in danger by being poisoned. In other words, except for Li Xianyang jumping off the cliff, everything was in Leng Shiqi's plan. Therefore, Sun Gang had nothing to say. He lowered his voice and said, Then I will wait for the good news from Lord Lu. With that, he flicked his sleeves and left. As for Leng Shiqi, after he quickly settled everything, he ordered everyone to rush to the vicinity of Xianyang Mountain and wait for orders. He secretly activated the Fate skill. Chapter 333. At the bottom of the cliff of Ai Ming Mountain, a person covered in blood was stumbling and running in a sorry state. This person was the sect master of the third-rate Xianyang sect, Li Xianyang. Li Xianyang's clothes were tattered and his hair was disheveled. He didn't look like a sect master at all. First, he was ambushed by Sun Gang and defeated. Then, he burned his essence blood and used his trump card to escape. However, his eyes were as cold as a beast's and filled with hatred. Hatred that soared to the heavens. He had been tricked by someone else, and that person was only at the mid-stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. Lu Xingji, what a good Lu Xingji. I'll skin you alive and pull out your tendons to relieve my hatred. Li Xianyang said through gritted teeth. But at this moment, his body froze. Red, blue, and yellow spirit lights suddenly appeared in front of him. Then, a figure bathed in spirit light walked out. This person was wearing a set of ferocious-looking demonic armor, and behind him was a cloak made of silver-white flowing light. His eyes were greenish-white, and there was a strange blood-red mark on his forehead. Moreover, his body was surrounded by purple demonic qi. His aura was comparable to the mid-stage of the spirit aperture realm. This was Leng Shiqi, who had activated the demonic beast blood rune armor, the beast origin battle rune, the white eye, and the demonic fiend blood rune. Leng Shiqi in his strongest state. Li Xianyang looked at the person who suddenly appeared. He didn't say anything because Leng Shiqi's dense killing intent said it all. He was here to kill Li Xianyang. Leng Shiqi's hands formed a seal. Cold qi and hot flames soared into the sky at the same time. Fire and ice tornado. However, this tornado didn't sweep out. Instead, it spread out and enveloped Leng Shiqi and Li Xianyang. The reason he did this was to prevent Li Xianyang from escaping. Li Xianyang's expression was grave. He didn't expect Leng Shiqi to be a difficult spirit caster. But of course, Li Xianyang wasn't going to just sit there and wait for death. Without hesitation, he ignited his blood essence again. Li Xianyang flipped his palm, and a burst of golden light appeared. It stretched for tens of meters, and there were faint traces of red light flashing within it. The golden radiance condensed into a huge palm shadow, which crashed down with a loud bang. Leng Shiqi made a grasping motion in the air, and the gangwood spear appeared in his hand. He let out a low growl, and his whole body exuded an unparalleled aura of death. At the same time, strands of golden light flashed, and the gangwood spear was covered in a layer of golden scales. Leng Shiqi's power burst forth, and his feet rumbled like thunder. His entire body directly rushed towards Li Xuanyang's palm shadow. Just as the spirit spear was about to collide with the palm shadow, a dazzling golden cross suddenly flashed in the air, instantly tearing apart the palm shadow. Golden cross spear. Leng Shiqi used Byakugan to see through the flaw in Li Xuanyang's attack and easily neutralized it. Li Xianyang formed a fist seal with his hands, and golden spirit qi continuously surged. He blasted out with Vajra, suppressing the world. Leng Shiqi, however, pointed a finger at Li Xianyang, and a crimson beam of light shot out. The thunderclap blood heavenly finger had an extremely strong penetrative power, and it pierced through Li Xuanyang's Vajra fist with a single point. The remaining finger energy continued to shoot toward Li Xianyang. The golden radiance around Li Xuanyang's body shrank, forming a light golden armor that blocked the remaining thunderclap blood heavenly finger. But at the same time, it also meant that he no longer had the initiative. Leng Shiqi's hands turned into two ghost claws. Demonic qi surged behind him, and a demonic dragon vaguely soared out. The demonic dragon soared into the sky, and two demonic claws tore through the night sky. This was Leng Shiqi's fusion of Ghost Jade Claw, Earth Fiend Demon Shadow Claw, and Wu Xiang's third stage spiritual technique, Dragon Capturing Claw, was the result of this fusion. Li Xuanyang's expression changed drastically. He roared, and the blood-red radiance on his body grew even brighter. His face turned even paler. He raised his palms to the sky. This was the beginning of his signature technique, the glorious sun mystic sun palm. Then, a golden sun appeared, suppressing the demonic aura, and melting the two demonic dragon claws. However, the golden sun also disappeared. At this time, Leng Shiqi unsheathed his inky jade sword. Hundreds of icy blue sword energy shot out, instantly drowning Li Xianyang. Li Xianyang immediately recognized the inky jade sword. He exclaimed, "You're Lu Xingji." The mid-stage spirit vein realm brat he'd always looked down on actually had such terrifying strength. He'd hidden his strength well. Li Xianyang knew that if this continued, he'd definitely die. There was only one thought in his mind, and that was to run. As a result, Li Xianyang simply stopped blocking the frost sword qi. He allowed the sword qi to hit his spirit armor while he took out a flying knife. This throwing knife was golden all over. Li Xianyang poured all of his spiritual power and blood energy into it, and it was immediately dyed red. The throwing knife shot out, but it wasn't aimed at Leng Shiqi. Instead, it was aimed at the tornado of ice and fire that surrounded them. The throwing knife was as fast as lightning. It instantly tore a large hole in the tornado of ice and fire. Li Xianyang turned into a blood-red radiance and shot out. Ling Shiqi didn't panic. He only took a light step forward, and his body appeared 30 meters away. His figure was like a ghost from the netherworld. It looked like he was drifting, but in reality, he was as fast as lightning. This was the combination of ghost parade, fluttering steps, and spring-stepping flash. It was a body movement that combined both lightness and movement, ghost steps of nether spring. Li Xianyang burned his essence and blood fast, but Ling Shiqi was faster. He felt that Ling Shiqi was still behind him, and a look of desperation appeared on his face. He knew that with his old body, even if he burned his essence and blood, he couldn't hold on for long. If he kept running like this, he would run out of essence and blood and die first. Instead of dying slowly, it was better to fight desperately. Maybe there was a chance of survival. Li Xianyang gritted his teeth and took out a palm-sized bright crystal. It was the first Origin 9 Apertures crystal. This was the key to his promotion to Gang's spirit realm, and he had risked countless dangers to get it. Now he had no time to think about the future. He planned to refine the first Origin 9 Apertures crystal directly. Although it would waste most of its power, it could help him recover a lot of spiritual power in a short time. With enough spiritual power, he naturally had the capital to escape. However, at this moment, Ling Shiqi, who was 30 meters away from him, suddenly flashed a silver light. His figure actually crossed the 30 meters and came to Li Xianyang in an instant. At this moment, Ling Shiqi was holding the green rain saber. All his spiritual power, qi and blood, devil qi, monster qi, and even his spiritual power and the will to kill Li Xianyang were gathered on the green rain saber. The green rain saber trembled in the scabbard and made a sound. After that, a chilly blade light flashed like a white horse, and it vanished in an instant. Li Xianyang's body was split into two in an instant. Chapter 334. The ephemeral epiphyllum split Li Xianyang in half, but strangely, not a single drop of blood flowed out. Li Xianyang had been burning his own essence blood, so there wasn't much blood left in his body. Ling Shiqi's blade that was infused with 9 leaves demonic qi became even more demonic as it was able to absorb Li Xianyang's blood. However, Ling Shiqi's current state wasn't very good. All of his statuses had disappeared, and his aura was constantly falling. Fortunately, he had absorbed part of Li Xianyang's remnant soul's power, which could be considered as replenishing some of his spiritual power and blood. Then, he quickly swallowed a few pills to recover his spiritual power and blood, and finally felt a bit better. Just as he was about to wipe the corpse, the first Origin 9 Aperture crystal that had fallen to the ground broke in half with a ka sound. It turned out that Ling Shiqi's blade had also broken the first Origin 9 Aperture crystal. Ling Shiqi was shocked. This was an extremely precious treasure. It would be a pity to destroy it just like that. However, 9 Leaves shouted, "Silly boy, why aren't you absorbing the power of the first Origin 9 Aperture crystal?" Ling Shiqi focused his eyes and saw that the first Origin 9 Aperture crystal was currently overflowing with a large amount of pure and majestic power. He quickly took the first Origin 9 Aperture crystal in his hand, and then quickly used his cultivation method to absorb and refine the power. He could immediately feel that the spiritual power in his body had clearly increased by a bit. In just a breath's time, it was equivalent to a day of bitter cultivation. Just how pure was the energy contained in it? No wonder Li Xianyang, a sect leader, wanted it even in his dreams. However, Ling Shiqi secretly felt that it was a pity. This first Origin 9 Aperture crystal was a treasure that could only be refined at the late stage of the Spirit Aperture realm. Even though he had already absorbed it with all his might, a lot of the power was still wasted. At this moment, 9 Leaves' voice sounded again, "Ling Shiqi, I can help you collect the power of the first Origin 9 Aperture crystal and not let it overflow. However, I want to absorb 60% of the power." Ling Shiqi only thought for a moment before agreeing. If he had to absorb and refine it himself, he probably wouldn't even be able to absorb 30%. According to 9 Leave, he could absorb 40%, which was already a great profit. Following that, Nine Leaves' soul body appeared. Her 10 fingers linked together to weave a green cocoon around her. Sure enough, the power emitted by the first origin 9 aperture crystal was unable to escape the green silkworm cocoon. Next, Ling Shiqi and Nine Leaf began to absorb the power of the first origin 9 aperture crystal. After half an incense stick's worth of time, Ling Shiqi's aura suddenly surged. 7th level of the spiritual pulse realm. The bottleneck from the 6th level to the 7th level of the spirit pulse realm was not small. Ling Shiqi had been prepared to be stuck at the peak of the 6th level for a long time, but now, he had easily broken through. Not only that, but his spiritual power was also increasing at a rapid pace. With the passage of time, Ling Shiqi's cultivation had reached the 8th level of the spiritual pulse realm. He had even reached the peak of the 8th level. As long as he continued, he would be able to break through to the 9th level of the spirit vein stage. Unfortunately, just as he was about to break through to the 9th level, the power of the first origin 9 aperture crystal was exhausted. Ling Shiqi sighed slightly, but after thinking about it, it was already a great opportunity for his cultivation to soar from the 6th level to the 8th level overnight. He was satisfied. Nine Leaf also absorbed the other power. At this moment, her soul body looked more solid. She looked at Ling Shiqi and said, "You didn't break through to the 9th level of the spirit vein stage. Are you a bit unwilling?" Ling Shiqi's thoughts turned quickly. Nine Leaves' words seemed to have a deeper meaning. He nodded and said, "Senior is really insightful." Nine Leaves smiled and said, "I'm in a good mood now, so I can remind you of something for free. Don't forget that there's still a little thing in your heart." Little thing? Hearing this, Ling Shiqi immediately remembered that there was indeed a mind control goo in his body. When Li Xianyang planted the mind control goo in him, he said that this goo worm was equivalent to a rank 6 treasure. Although it was half dead now, it did contain a lot of power. Ling Shiqi had also studied the mind control goo before. In fact, this mind control goo was a parasite in a person's heart. It constantly released illusions to affect the mind and thoughts of the person affected. Ling Shiqi closed his eyes again and began to refine the mind control goo. This time, he used the 5-god flowing light art. In terms of illusions, how could a small goo worm compare to the 5-god flowing light art? Ling Shiqi's body flashed with 5-colored light as he successfully refined the mind control goo without any obstruction. About an hour later, his body was covered in 5-colored light. His cultivation was already at the 9th level of the spirit vein stage. Ling Shiqi opened his eyes. 2 rays of 5-colored light suddenly burst out and then dissipated. He felt the majestic spirit force in his body and couldn't help but feel a bit high-spirited. In one night, his cultivation jumped from the 6th level of the spirit vein stage to the 9th level of the spirit vein stage. This speed was already heaven-defying. However, he quickly suppressed this thought in his heart. There were countless geniuses in the world and countless opportunities. He could encounter them, but others also had their own opportunities. He wouldn't belittle himself, but he definitely wouldn't be arrogant. With this thought, the last trace of excitement and pride in Ling Shiqi's heart disappeared and was replaced with calmness. At the same time, he also understood why many people would be lost in power and would do anything to obtain power. For example, Li Xianyang. Thinking of Li Xianyang, Ling Shiqi walked to his corpse and took his mustard seed bracelet. Not only did this mustard seed bracelet contain a large amount of resources, but the space inside was also several times larger than Ling Shiqi's mustard seed bag. He simply wore the mustard seed bracelet on his wrist. Nine Leaves' soul body glanced at the mustard seed bracelet on his wrist. Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat when he saw this. He secretly thought to himself, Nine Leaf wouldn't still be eyeing the resources in the mustard seed bracelet, right? Nine Leaves' eyes turned and he smiled. Ling Shiqi, do you think Li Xuanyang's palm technique is powerful? Ling Shiqi couldn't guess Nine Leaves' intentions. He said, Li Xuanyang's glorious sun mystic palm is a peak level 5 spiritual technique and is famous consummate technique. It's naturally very powerful. That's right. In fact, This glorious sun mystic palm is just one of the spiritual techniques attached to the golden mystic yang technique. Senior seems to know this technique? Ling Shiqi couldn't help but be a little puzzled. Nine Leaf explained, my cultivation has recovered a lot and my soul power has also increased. After Li Xianyang died, I swallowed a part of his soul and extracted this technique. Ling Shiqi's eyes widened. He seemed to know what Nine Leaf was going to say. Nine Leaf's lips curled into a smile. I can give you the technique, but I want all the resources in this mustard seed bag. Chapter 335. Hearing Nine Leaf's words, Ling Shiqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It seemed that Nine Leaf had been eyeing Li Xuanyang's resources. Of course, he wanted Li Xuanyang's cultivation methods and spirit techniques. Although there weren't many cultivation resources in the mustard seed bracelet, they were all top quality. If he could consume these resources, his cultivation and strength would rise to another level. However, these resources were still inferior to Li Xuanyang's golden mystic yang art and more than one rank 5 spirit technique. After all, cultivation methods and spirit techniques were the foundation of a spirit cultivator. Ling Shiqi gritted his teeth and said, okay. Nine Leaf chuckled and wrote the golden mystic yang art's mantra in the air. Then, she asked Ling Shiqi to release her body. Ling Shiqi did as he was told and poured out all the resources in the mustard seed bracelet. Nine Leaf's soul and body became one. She opened her mouth and swallowed all the resources like a whale swallowing mountains and rivers. Not bad. Nine Leaf nodded in satisfaction and said, okay, Li Xianyang is dead. Destroying the profound Yang sect shouldn't be difficult for you. I'll go out for a walk. After a while, I'll come and find you for the remaining resources. Ling Shiqi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He didn't expect Nine Leaf to be so confident in him destroying the profound Yang sect. Then, without waiting for Ling Shiqi's reply, Nine Leaf turned into a purple light and disappeared into the night. However, Ling Shiqi had a feeling that Nine Leaf would cause trouble sooner or later. AI, forget it. Let's not care about her. Ling Shiqi shook his head slightly. Then, he used the Ghost Spring steps and rushed to Mist City. While rushing, he was thinking about how to destroy the profound Yang sect. Currently, the profound Yang sect still had Li Feizhou, the Spirit Aperture Realm Great Elder. In addition, he also had 4 Spirit Pulse Realm Direct Disciples. These 5 people were the biggest threat. In addition, there were more than 30 Spirit Transformation Realm and 1 to 200 Spirit Assembly Realm and Pure Spirit Realm disciples. These people were nothing to be afraid of, but there were so many of them that they might run away. If he didn't remove the roots, there would be endless trouble in the future. Therefore, Ling Shiqi had 2 urgent matters to solve. First, who would deal with Li Feizhou? Regarding this point, Ling Shiqi's original plan was to ask Sun Gang to make a move. He had used the first Origin 9 Aperture Crystal as a reward to get Sun Gang to attack Li Xianyang. According to the original plan, he had not intended to keep the first Origin 9 Aperture Crystal for himself. He really intended to give it to Sun Gang. So he to ask Sun Gang to deal with Li Feizhou, Sun to deal with him. After all, Li Tu's to make to him to do. To Ling Shiqi's Tu's that was to B's to Li Sun. Now, Ling Shiqi had 2 choices. He could either mobilize the silver-striped Blood Cloak assassins from the Blood Cloak Pavilion, or he could fight Li Feizhou himself. If Ling Shiqi wanted to assassinate Xianyang sect secretly, it would be best to hire the silver-striped Blood-Red Cloak assassins. After all, that was what they were best at. However, Ling Shiqi wanted to wipe out Xianyang sect openly. Only by doing so could he make the most contribution and spread his name far and wide. Therefore, he could only do it himself. Now that Ling Shiqi's cultivation had climbed to the 9th level of the Spirit Pulse realm, if he were to activate all his powers, he would indeed have the strength of an early-stage Spirit Aperture realm cultivator. However, he only had strength and didn't have the characteristics of a Spirit Aperture realm cultivator. Therefore, if he wanted to fight Li Feizhou, he had to weaken Li Feizhou's strength before that. Moreover, he didn't need to kill Li Feizhou. As long as he could delay him, his subordinates would quickly kill the other disciples of Xianyang's sect, and then surround Li Feizhou. As for Li Feizhou, he temporarily thought of this. There was another problem if he wanted to destroy Xianyang's sect, and that was to have a large amount of manpower. He had around 80 dark lightning guards under him, and all of them were at the spirit transformation realm. They were the elites of the elites. Killing the disciples of Xianyang's sect wasn't a problem, but their weakness was obvious. They didn't have a lot of people. Even with the dozens of reserve members in Dark Lightning Manor, they only had around 100 people. It was still far from enough to completely destroy Xianyang's sect. As for the 6 great families, there were around 60 people in total, which was barely enough. However, in order to be absolutely sure, Ling Shiqi decided to look for someone. It was someone he had met once before, and that was the deputy commander of Lan Chi City's city guards, Ning Xiu. The commander of the city guards, Su Ji, had been missing for a few days, and Sun Gang had secretly come to Ai Ming Mountain under the pretext of investigating. Now, all of Lan Chi City's affairs were managed by Ning Xiu, and he could be said to be proud of himself. Ling Shiqi guessed that Sun Gang would definitely put on a show and wouldn't return to Lan Chi City for the next 2 days. He wanted to persuade Ning Xiu to send a portion of the city guards to assist him in attacking Xianyang's sect before Sun Gang returned. Thus, he hurried through the night and finally returned to Lan Chi City at noon the next day. He had been using the Netherworld Ghost Steps to hasten his journey. Even though he was at the 9th level of the Spirit Pulse realm, he still couldn't take it. First, he confirmed that Ning Xiu was indeed in the City Lord's manor. Then, he rested for a while before going to look for Ning Xiu. When Ning Xiu found out that Ling Shiqi, the supervisor of Dark Lightning Manor, was looking for him, he was a little surprised. However, in terms of status, Ling Shiqi was 1 level higher than him, so he had to treat Ling Shiqi warmly. However, Ling Shiqi didn't have time to pretend with him. He directly took out the supervisor's token and ordered, "I want to destroy Xianyang's sect, which colluded with other countries and committed a heinous crime. Now, I need the city lord's manor to mobilize the city guards to assist me." Ling Shiqi's short sentence set off a huge wave in Ning Xiu's heart. Did he hear wrongly? Destroy the third-rate Xianyang sect? However, when he saw Ling Shiqi's supervisor's token, he couldn't say a word. According to the rules of the Thunderflame dynasty, the Dark Lightning Guards could indeed mobilize the city guards in an emergency. However, this kind of thing had to be decided by the city lord himself. However, Sun Gang wasn't here, so he didn't dare to make this decision. Ling Shiqi saw that Ning Xiu was hesitating and immediately snorted, "Is Deputy Commander Ning going to defy my order?" Ning Xiu shook his head repeatedly, "Lord Lu, this is a serious matter. City Lord Sun isn't in the city right now, so I really can't make this decision." "How dare you!" Ling Shiqi shouted angrily. The Xianyang sect's traitors could escape at any time. If Deputy Commander Ning is unwilling to cooperate with me and the traitors escape, can you bear this kind of crime? Ning Xiu immediately trembled. Of course, he couldn't bear it. However, mobilizing the city guards was a serious matter. If something happened, he couldn't escape punishment. He was in a dilemma. Ning Xiu wished that Sun Gang and Su Ji were both here. That way, he wouldn't have to bear this kind of heavy responsibility. However, Ling Shiqi's tone calmed down. "Deputy Commander Ning, I'm not here to make things difficult for you. I'm here to give you credit. Don't worry, the Xianyang sect is like a turtle in a jar. As long as Deputy Commander Ning is willing to transfer 200 city guards to me, I can guarantee that everyone will return in one piece and will give Deputy Commander Ning a great credit. I heard that Commander Su Ji has been missing for a few days. Don't you want to remove the word deputy? You should know that I'm also a spiritual pulse realm cultivator. Commander Ning is also qualified to be a supervisor." He even emphasized the words Commander Ning. In addition, he unknowingly used an illusion to affect part of Ning Xiu's mind. When Ning Xiu heard the words, Commander Ning, from Ling Shiqi, his heart was filled with hot blood. He gritted his teeth and didn't hesitate any longer. He said, "This subordinate obeys." Chapter 336. One day later, at the entrance of Profound Sun Sect. At this moment, the two doormen of Pure Spirit Realm were standing there in boredom. They were still chatting with each other. However, all of a sudden, a figure covered in blood staggered over. "Who is it?" The two doormen immediately shouted. When they saw the person's face, they exclaimed, "Elder Chang." It turned out that this person was Li Xuanyang's eldest direct disciple, Elder Chang Wei of Profound Sun Sect. While running, Chang Wei panted and shouted, "Quick! Take me to Master Uncle Li. I have an urgent matter to report." The two doormen immediately panicked. Chang Wei was usually a high-ranking person in Profound Sun Sect. Now that he was in such a state, something terrible must have happened. Between the two of them, the older one came back to his senses first. He supported Chang Wei and walked quickly. The other doorman frowned and continued to guard the mountain gate. Not long after Chang Wei went up the mountain, another 10 people came to the entrance. These 10 people all had powerful auras. They were all in the spiritual pulse realm. Although the doorman could not see their cultivation, he often came in contact with spiritual pulse realm cultivators. He could roughly tell that they were all in the spiritual pulse realm. Thus, he became even more nervous. What could happen when 10 spiritual pulse realm cultivators came to Profound Sun Sect? When he thought of Elder Chang's miserable state, he had a bad premonition. Just as the doorman was about to ask, one of them suddenly pointed at the doorman. A yellow finger energy directly pierced through the doorman's head. The doorman's body fell to the ground. Even in death, he did not understand why they suddenly killed him. And the person who killed him was Qiu Cheng. The other 9 people were naturally Qiao Qian, Pang Yuan, the people from the 6 great clans, and the vice-commander of the city guards, Ning Xiu. Behind them, there were 80 dark lightning guards, 60 disciples of the great clans, and 200 city guards. With such a lineup, it was more than enough to destroy a half-crippled Profound Sun Sect. But there was still a huge threat in Profound Sun Sect, and that was the great elder Li Feizhou. At this moment, Li Feizhou was meeting with Chang Wei. When he saw Chang Wei's terrible injuries, he knew that something bad had happened. Of course, he knew that Li Xianyang had brought a few direct disciples and spirit transformation realm disciples down the mountain. He also guessed what Li Xianyang was going to do, but he was powerless to stop him. Thus, he could only pray that Li Xianyang would return safely. But 2 days had passed, there was no news of Li Xuanyang's group. Li Feizhou knew that there must have been an accident. However, he didn't know where Li Xianyang and the others had gone. All he could do was stay in the Profound Yang sect. Chang Wei's Li Feizhou, Li Feizhou, Li Feizhou. However, Li Feizhou was far more cautious than Li Xianyang. He helped Chang Wei over and transferred some of his spiritual energy to him. In this way, not only could he help Chang Wei recover some of his Yuan Qi, he could also find out if Chang Wei was real or fake. Li Feizhou quickly sensed that the cultivation method in Chang Wei's body was the golden mystic yang skill, so he dispelled the vigilance in his heart. He hurriedly asked, "What about senior brother sect leader? What the hell is going on?" "Martial uncle, it's not good, it's not good," Chang Wei said with a panicked expression, but he glanced at the people around him. Li Feizhou waved his hand, and those people left on their own accord. Chang Wei then said, "Martial uncle, the night before yesterday we followed Master to Ai Ming Mountain to trade with the people of Zhu Lu country. At first, it was very smooth, but who knew?" Chang Wei's words made Li Feizhou very uncomfortable. He panicked. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" "Who knows?" Chang Wei didn't finish his sentence. Demonic energy surged around him and a set of black demonic armor appeared. A few blood marks appeared on his forehead. At the same time, the azure rain saber was unsheathed, and an extremely condensed saber light flashed across. This saber looked very ordinary, but in this world, it was as if it was the only thing that existed. Everything else was destroyed. Li Feizhou would never have guessed that his martial nephew Chang would actually attack him. Facing this blade that seemed to cut through space, Li Feizhou couldn't help but be shocked. He hurriedly used his spiritual armor to resist. However, the spiritual armor was easily torn apart by the blade as if it was made of paper. Li Feizhou hurriedly put his hands in front of him. In an instant, a golden light flashed and a 5-foot large palm print appeared. Unfortunately, the palm print was torn in half by the blade before it could fully condense. However, the power of the blade was greatly reduced. In the end, the blade landed on Li Feizhou's body. His skin and flesh were torn apart and his meridians were broken. Just as the blade was about to shatter his internal organs, a majestic demonic energy burst out from his body. A ferocious headless demon suddenly appeared and blocked the fatal blow for him. But even so, Li Feizhou was seriously injured. Chang Wei sneered, "He, elderly of Xianyang's sect, is actually secretly cultivating demonic arts. If this matter were to spread, Xianyang's sect's reputation would be ruined." Li Feizhou looked at Chang Wei in front of him. He was shocked and angry, but also very puzzled. He secretly tested the other party just now. Chang Wei's cultivation technique was clearly the Golden Mystic Yang technique. The appearance and injuries could be faked, but how could the cultivation technique be faked? Unfortunately, what he didn't know was that Leng Shiqi had used the system to cultivate the Golden Mystic Yang technique in an instant. And the only way he could think of to delay Li Feizhou was to use the same trick again. He had cultivated the bone transformation technique and used this technique to change his body shape to be exactly the same as Chang Wei's. With the help of 1,000 faces, he changed his appearance so that he could deceive all eyes. Only then could he seriously injure Li Feizhou. Now that Leng Shiqi's cultivation had increased greatly, using the flash in the pan technique would no longer make him collapse, but it still consumed more than 60% of his spiritual energy. Moreover, he could no longer maintain the demonic beast blood tattoo armor and demonic fiend blood tattoo. It could be said that his battle strength was greatly reduced. Even though Li Feizhou was seriously injured, he was still an expert in the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. The current situation was still unfavorable for Leng Shiqi. However, Leng Shiqi wasn't worried. His task was to delay Leng Shiqi. Li Feizhou also saw this point and immediately shouted, "Men." However, after a few breaths, no one came in. At the same time, there were sounds of fighting outside. Li Feizhou's heart sank. Leng Shiqi coldly said, "Li Feizhou, the Dark Thunder Guards and City Guards have already surrounded Xianyang's sect. Xianyang's sect will no longer exist from now on. You." Li Feizhou's eyes instantly turned crimson red. His body involuntarily emitted demonic qi. Xianyang's sect was his life's work. Seeing that it was about to collapse, he seemed to be going crazy. "Ah!" Li Feizhou roared. Demonic qi surged out of his body and condensed into headless ghosts. Leng Shiqi didn't use any spiritual techniques. Instead, 5 light golden needles appeared in his hand. Chapter 337. These 5 golden needles were the golden thread demon needles that Leng Shiqi obtained from Su Lu and the other demonic cultivators. Leng Shiqi flicked his fingers and the 5 golden needles shot out. Although Li Feizhou was mad, he was still rational. He felt the threat of the golden needles and quickly ordered a few headless ghosts to intercept the golden needles. Unfortunately, the golden needles were treasures that could restrain ghosts. They pierced through the headless ghosts and nailed onto Li Feizhou's body. Immediately after, golden runes appeared and circulated around Li Feizhou's body, completely sealing all of his demonic qi. The golden thread demon needles could easily seal the 1,000-year-old black fiend demonic corpse, not to mention Li Feizhou, a half-baked demonic cultivator. With his demonic qi sealed, Li Feizhou was immediately devoured by the demonic qi ghosts. He spat out a few mouthfuls of blood with his internal organs as his aura plummeted. Li Feizhou looked at Leng Shiqi in shock. He would never have thought that Leng Shiqi was also surrounded by demonic qi. He was obviously a demonic cultivator. But this demonic cultivator actually had a treasure that could restrain demonic qi? What made him even more shocked was that Ling Shiqi had also removed his disguise. Li Feizhou immediately recognized him. Supervisor of Dark Thunder Hall, Lu. Okay. Got it. Li Feizhou gritted his teeth and spat out the words. That's right. Ling Shiqi said calmly and started chatting with Li Feizhou. His purpose here was to stall Li Feizhou, not to fight to the death with him. Even though Li Feizhou was injured, he was still an expert in the middle stage of the spirit aperture realm. Moreover, as the great elder of the profound Yang sect, no one would believe that he didn't have anything on him. So, since Li Feizhou wanted to chat with him, Ling Shiqi was naturally very willing to do so. The longer this dragged on, the more disciples of the profound Yang sect would die. As long as those people were all dead, he would be able to receive reinforcements. Ling Shiqi continued, Li Feizhou, give up. Li Xianyang is dead, and the Xianyang sect will cease to exist. If you surrender, I can let you leave with a few good seedlings. It can be considered as leaving behind some descendants. Ha ha ha. Li Feizhou laughed. Lu Xingji, who would believe your words? I have nothing to say about falling into your hands. I can only blame senior brother sect leader for being greedy. But you want me to surrender? Don't even think about it. Ling Shiqi just shook his head. He raised his hand, and cold air and raging flames swept out and enveloped Li Feizhou. Of course, Ling Shiqi did not expect the fire and ice tornado to kill Li Feizhou. His hands quickly formed a seal, and a strange evil aura appeared, condensing into a terrifying evil aura in midair. Ghost Shadow shrieked, and waves of evil aura surged out and covered Li Feizhou. His body no longer flickered with golden light, as if he was waiting for death. Ling Shiqi gave a signal with his eyes. Pang Yuan and the other two carefully approached. Even if Li Feizhou said so, they did not dare to be careless. Qiao Qing pointed, Xiao Qian stabbed, and Pang Yuan's blade fell. The three spirit pulse realm cultivators all used their strongest spiritual techniques to attack Li Feizhou, who was waiting for death. Just as the three spiritual techniques were about to hit him, Li Feizhou suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with boundless hatred. Die! He roared, and his head flew into the air on its own. Blood spurted out from his neck like a fountain. The blood condensed into the body of a headless ghost, and Li Feizhou's head fused with the ghost, turning into a half-human, half-ghost existence. Li Feizhou's sudden change instantly sent Xiao Qian and the other two flying. Then, he directly charged towards Ling Shiqi. Not good. Pang Yuan shouted and immediately rushed over. Ling Shiqi did not move. His hands formed the grasping flower seal, and his body emitted a faint golden light. At the same time, a silver-white brilliance filled with holy power suddenly lit up behind him, weaving into a cloak. Before Li Feizhou could get close to Ling Shiqi, half of his body was vaporized by the holy power and holy light. Ling Shiqi's ink jade sword came out of its sheath, and then his body disappeared. Li Feizhou was stunned for a moment. Then, he saw colorful glazed flower petals falling from the sky. Just as Ling Shiqi was puzzled, the flowers suddenly shot out countless sword qi. Then, hundreds of Ling Shiqi appeared out of thin air. He waved his sword qi and formed a sword net to attack Jiang Chen. Chaotic flower dazzling eyes. The boundless sword qi and the violent sword net cut Li Feizhou into pieces in the blink of an eye. Strangely, Li Feizhou was not completely dead. He unwillingly roared, "No!" At this moment, Pang Yuan charged over. Li Feizhou used the last bit of strength to charge at Pang Yuan. Pang Yuan was caught off guard and was hit by Li Feizhou. His body flew out, and he spat out blood. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Li Feizhou's blood-red body finally dissipated, and there was no longer any signs of life. However, Ling Shiqi's face was pale. Originally, after using Flash of the Night and several spirit techniques, he did not have much spirit energy left. Now that he had forcefully used chaotic flower dazzling eyes, his spirit energy was slightly overdrawn. Fortunately, he absorbed Li Feizhou's remnant soul and recovered some. Then, he took Li Feizhou's mustard seed bag and walked out of the hall. Qiao Qian and Qiu Qing supported the dying Pang Yuan and followed behind him. Outside, the entire Xianyang sect was stained with blood. Everywhere was filled with the smell of blood. Looking around, there was not a single Xianyang sect disciple left. A dignified spirit cultivator sect, the Profound Yang sect, was actually completely destroyed by Leng Shiqi. Chapter 338. The news of the destruction of the third-rate sect, Profound Yang sect, caused an uproar in the North region and even the entire West Desolate province. The West Desolate province was an important place at the border. The spirit cultivator sects there had always been under the control of the Thunderblaze dynasty. Thus, the spirit cultivator sects in the West Desolate province had always been very obedient. Not to mention the massacre of a sect, there hadn't even been any major conflicts. However, the Profound Yang sect was actually destroyed. The reason was even more shocking. The Profound Yang sect actually dared to collude with the Zhu Lu country to smuggle refined iron. In the border region, the Profound Yang sect dared to play such a trick. They were truly audacious. They deserved such an outcome. What was even more shocking was that the person who destroyed the Profound Yang sect was merely a supervisor from the Dark Thunder Manor in the Mist Chi City, a Spirit Pulse Realm supervisor. This was the first time they had heard of a Spirit Pulse Realm supervisor. However, this person used some unknown method to destroy the Profound Yang sect that had 2 Spirit Aperture Realm experts. Once this matter was out, all the powers in the West Desolate province, including the Spirit Cultivator sects, the Discipline Commission, the Dark Thunder Guards, and the various city lord residences all remembered the name of this supervisor. Lu Xingji. As the instigator of this matter, Leng Shiqi had already brought his subordinates back to the Mist Chi City with dozens of carriages. Those carriages were naturally filled with the cultivation resources of the Profound Yang sect. Although they also had many mustard seed bags, these resources were all reserved for distribution. Of course, it was better to keep an eye on them. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if someone were to fill their own pockets. At this time, hundreds of large boxes filled the entire courtyard of the Dark Thunder Manor. Not long after, another group of people carried dozens of boxes in. The leader was Leng Shiqi. And these boxes were plundered from the Du family. Before the news of the Profound Yang sect's destruction spread, Leng Shiqi had already gone to destroy the Du family. Furthermore, he had also sent people to the surrounding cities to eradicate the families that were involved in the smuggling of refined iron. Presumably, a large amount of resources would be sent over soon. When Leng Shiqi walked into the courtyard, his eyes lit up when he saw the countless cultivation resources before him. There was no need to even mention Qiu Qing, Qiao Qian, and the Dark Thunder Guards. They had probably never seen so many resources in their entire lives, but now, it was right in front of them, waving at them. Many people were even drooling all over the floor. But no one dared to touch it. They knew that before Leng Shiqi spoke, whoever dared to touch it would die. Leng Shiqi clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention. Although we've eliminated Xianyang sect and gotten rid of a threat for dynasty, we've also lost a Dark Lightning envoy. Leng Shiqi was talking about Pang Yuan, who had been seriously injured by Li Feizhou before he died. On their way back, Pang Yuan had already died. The reason why Leng Shiqi had Thousand Face replace Pang Yuan was to appease his subordinates and eliminate dissidents. Now that he had secured his position as a supervisor, Pang Yuan's existence was no longer as important. Moreover, no matter how well Thousand Face disguised himself, there would still be some flaws, especially when he could not fully unleash his true strength. Therefore, Leng Shiqi took this opportunity to release Thousand Face. When everyone heard Leng Shiqi mention Pang Yuan, they lowered their heads silently. Although Pang Yuan was usually a little hot-tempered, he was generous and forthright. Everyone trusted him. Now that he had died in Li Feizhou's hands, everyone was a little sad. However, Leng Shiqi's next words dispelled all their sadness. He said, It's because of people like Pang Yuan who aren't afraid of death that we were able to destroy the Xianyang sect so easily and obtain such abundant cultivation resources. When they heard about cultivation resources, everyone's eyes were filled with anticipation and excitement. Leng Shiqi said, "Among these resources, 20% will be mine and 20% will be yours." Hiss. 20%? Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They did not expect Leng Shiqi to be so generous. 20% may sound like a small amount, but there were hundreds of boxes here. If they counted carefully, each of them could carry 2 or 3 boxes home. These resources were far more valuable than their combined monthly salaries for several years. "Thank you for the reward, sir." Everyone shouted in unison. Leng Shiqi waved his hand and said, "This is what you deserve. As long as you are loyal to me, there will be more of these things in the future. Take out 10% of the resources and give it to the 6 great families and the city lord's mansion." 10% for the 6 great families and the city lord's mansion was not a lot. Although the 6 great families had already sided with him, they were just like the Dark Lightning Guards. If you give them some benefits, they will support you even more. As for the city lord's mansion, the city lord Sun Gang was called over by him. Leng Shiqi took advantage of Sun Gang's absence to transfer the city guards away. The 5% of the resources was a small token of his sincerity. The last 50% will be sealed in the treasury. Yes. After Leng Shiqi arranged everything, he began to choose the resources he needed. For the current Leng Shiqi, there were 2 things that he needed the most. First, cultivation methods and spiritual techniques. Needless to say, spiritual techniques were Leng Shiqi's foundation. Cultivation methods were also very important. This was because Leng Shiqi was now at the 9th level of the Spirit Pulse realm. Although this was the last level of the Spirit Pulse realm, it was just the beginning for him. He had already opened 10 Spirit Pulses in his body, but his goal was to open all 72 Spirit Pulses. However, the cultivation techniques he currently possessed, including the Heaven Fiend 9 Underworld's Demonic Beast Blood Devouring Record, the 5 Gods Flowing Light Technique, the 1000 Revolutions Illusory World Technique, the Amorphous Truth, and the Golden Mystic Yang Technique added up to only 42 spirit veins. This was because these cultivation methods also had spirit pulses in common. Therefore, Leng Shiqi needed more cultivation methods of rank 4 and above to open more spirit pulses. Unfortunately, the resources of the Xianyang sect and Du family only had some low-level cultivation methods and spiritual techniques. As for the high-level ones, they were probably hidden in the minds of Du Hechang, Li Xianyang, and Li Feizhou. Other than cultivation methods and spiritual techniques, Leng Shiqi also needed to prepare for his breakthrough to the Spirit Aperture realm. Breaking through from the Spirit Pulse realm to the Spirit Aperture realm required 2 things at the same time. One was to condense the liquid spirit energy in the body into a spirit spiral, and the other was to open one of the 360 spirit apertures in the body. The best way to do this was to take the spirit spiral pill and the awakening pill. However, these 2 pills were not only expensive, they were also priceless. Under normal circumstances, even if you had the money, you wouldn't be able to buy them. Coincidentally, among the resources of the Xianyang sect, there were 3 spirit spiral pills and 1 awakening pill. Leng Shiqi naturally took them without hesitation. As for the rest, he chose some high-level body refining resources and materials. He waved his hand and used the mustard seed bracelet to store the 20% of the resources that belonged to him, filling the mustard seed bracelet to the brim. Fortunately, he changed to a higher-level mustard seed bracelet, otherwise, he would have to use several mustard seed bags to store them. After everyone was done distributing the resources, Leng Shiqi returned to his room. The first thing he did was to sell 80% of the items in the mustard seed bracelet to the system. His system coins directly soared to 6,382 points. Leng Shiqi looked at the sky-high price of system coins and was moved. He hesitated for a moment, then decided to do 5 unlimited draws. He left over 1,000 system coins just in case he needed them. After all, the system store refreshed every day. If something he wanted appeared but he couldn't afford it, then he would lose out. Then, He opened the lottery page and pressed the unlimited draw button. Chapter 339. Congratulations to the host for winning the beginner prize, melting iron rod. Ling Shiqi's face darkened when he saw the notification. This was the first time he had won a beginner prize in the infinite draw. He had wasted 990 system coins. Ling Shiqi wiped his face as if he wanted to make it look whiter. He then clicked on the infinite draw again. Congratulations to the host for winning the intermediate prize, Shaoyang Sword Qi. Ling Shiqi's face finally looked better. Although the intermediate prize was a loss, it was still better than the beginner prize. Moreover, this spiritual technique was quite useful. Shaoyang Sword Qi was a level 4 spiritual technique. When the sword Qi was released, it was as sharp as the rising sun. When the sword Qi entered the body, it would burn the meridians. It was a very good spiritual technique. Ling Shiqi originally had channel unblocking sword Qi and frost sword Qi. However, as his cultivation level increased, the power of these two sword Qi could no longer keep up. For example, when he went to kill Li Xianyang, even if he released hundreds of frost sword Qi, it could not cause any fatal damage. Instead, Li Xianyang found a chance to escape. This Shaoyang sword Qi made up for it. However, it was still a loss. Ling Shiqi's face darkened. He had already won the beginner and intermediate prizes consecutively. It was equivalent to about 1,900 system coins going down the drain. At this time, he already regretted it. It was not as good as 20 intermediate draws. However, the infinite draw was like this. There was no upper or lower limit. Of course, it was impossible to win every time. Since Ling Shiqi had already decided to do the infinite draw, he would not change his mind easily. Therefore, he clicked on the infinite draw again. Congratulations to the host for winning the top prize, Yin-Yang Spirit Gathering Formation. Top prize. Ling Shiqi first wondered if he had seen wrongly. Then, with a flash of light, he saw a set of formation plates and formation flags appear in front of him. This was actually a mobile array formation. Ling Shiqi quickly read through the method of using the Yin and Yang Spirit Gathering Formation. Even though he had a strong will, he could not help but breathe heavily. The Yin-Yang Spirit Convergence Array, as its name implied, was a type of spirit convergence array. Its most powerful aspect was its domineering nature. The tyrannical plundering of all the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the vicinity could greatly increase the speed of cultivation. However, the cost of using the Yin and Yang Spirit Gathering Formation was also very high. In order to activate the Yin and Yang Spirit Gathering Array, the minimum requirement was 500 spirit stones. Moreover, 500 spirit stones were only enough to maintain the array for 2 hours. The more spirit stones he put in, the better the effect. How was this spirit gathering? This was clearly wealth gathering. However, he still had to try it out to see how effective it would be. Then, he formed a spiritual seal with his hands, and the Yin-Yang Spirit Gathering Formation's formation disc and formation flags scattered in all directions and hid them underground. Immediately, with the Ling Shiqi as the center, an extremely complex array appeared in a radius of several feet. At the outermost periphery of the array, there were densely packed grooves. Ling Shiqi waved his hand and 500 spirit stones flew out and landed on top of the grooves. Then, the Yin and Yang Spirit Gathering Formation suddenly bloomed with a dazzling purple-blue brilliance. Ling Shiqi only heard a muffled roar in his ears. Then, the array began to madly devour the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the vicinity like a black hole. Ling Shiqi felt that the heaven and earth spiritual qi in the surroundings had indeed become much denser and denser. In the blink of an eye, it had become 2 times, 3 times, 10 times. The heaven and earth spiritual qi in the room had become 10 times denser before it stopped increasing. Ling Shiqi secretly took a deep breath. He only needed to cultivate in this environment for 2 hours, and it was almost equivalent to a day and a night of cultivation. 500 spirit stones was definitely not a loss. Spirit stones could still provide a considerable amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi for spirit cultivators below the 4th level of the heaven realm. However, after reaching the 4th level of the heaven realm, the effect of ordinary spirit stones would be greatly reduced. Therefore, for Leng Shiqi, ordinary spirit stones were only used as currency. Now, he could use the yin and yang spirit gathering formation to convert these useless spirit stones into real spiritual chi. It could be said that he had another way to quickly increase his cultivation. However, this method was really too expensive. Now, Leng Shiqi had plundered a lot of spirit stones from several families and the profound Yang sect, but there were not many in his hands. Especially when he was choosing cultivation resources previously, he did not take too many spirit stones. Now, he only had about 7,000 spirit stones in total. This number was considered a lot for a spirit cultivator in the late stage of the spirit pulse realm. However, if he wanted to continue using the yin and yang spirit gathering formation, it was far from enough. More than 7,000 spirit stones were only enough to last for a dozen hours. Leng Shiqi pondered. After the families in the other cities who smuggled iron were destroyed, he would have to take more spirit stones. Next, he cultivated in the yin and yang spirit gathering array for 2 hours. He was fascinated by the feeling of his spiritual power increasing. After finishing his cultivation, Leng Shiqi put the yin and yang spirit gathering formation into the system space. It was really convenient to carry this thing around. After putting away the formation, he opened the lottery page again. He still reserved 2 unlimited lottery chances. When he opened the unlimited lottery again, a stream of light flashed and a card appeared in his hand. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the advanced prize, card Faceless Manipulator. The advanced prize was not very profitable, but at least it was not a loss. Leng Shiqi looked at the introduction of the card again. Card Faceless Manipulator, choose a non-human unit and become its clone. When Leng Shiqi saw this description, his first reaction was that it was different from what he remembered. Then, he immediately thought of a person. Or rather, a monster, 9 Leave. According to the description of this card, he could use it to clone another 9 Leave and directly create a big monster. However, the cloned 9 Leave would probably have no self-awareness like Purple Feather. Even so, it would still be a big monster. Just thinking about it made Leng Shiqi feel a little excited. He also began to miss 9 Leave a little. Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment. It was best to wait for 9 Leave's cultivation to recover before using this card. Only then would he be able to unleash its full potential, so he stored it in the system space. In the end, he struck while the iron was hot and clicked on the unlimited lottery. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the advanced prize, 9 Scrolls of Buddhist Scriptures. When Leng Shiqi saw the advanced prize for the first time, he was delighted. However, when he saw that the prize was 9 Scrolls of Buddhist Scriptures, he was a little stunned. And the system really gave him 9 Scrolls of Buddhist Scriptures. Mahaprajna, Mystic Dharma Lotus Sutra, Vidyalaya Sutra, Vajraprajna Paramitha Sutra, Amitba Sutra, these Buddhist scriptures were said to be 9 scrolls, but there was a big pile in front of him. Leng Shiqi flipped through the Buddhist scriptures one by one. After a while, he could not help but feel puzzled. These were indeed genuine Buddhist scriptures, but they did not contain any cultivation methods or spiritual skills. They looked like very normal Buddhist scriptures. But why were these things classified as advanced prizes? Chapter 340. 2 days later, Leng Shiqi arrived at the West Desolation City. The West Desolation City was thousands of miles away from the West Desolation City. Even if he rode a spirit horse, it would take him about 4 days to arrive. But with the Fate ability, it was much easier for him to travel. In just 2 days, he arrived at the West Desolation City. At this moment, he was standing at the entrance of the West Desolation Province's Dark Thunder Guard headquarters. Leng Shiqi's purpose was to meet the inspector of the West Desolation Province's Dark Thunder Guard, Yu Ruifeng. When Yu Ruifeng heard that Leng Shiqi wanted to meet him, he welcomed him with a smile. Ha ha ha, nephew Lu is here. Come in and have a seat. Leng Shiqi cupped his fists and said, Greetings, Lord Yu. Yu Ruifeng patted Leng Shiqi's shoulder affectionately and said, There's no need to be so formal between us. Just call me Martial Uncle. This. Leng Shiqi showed a hesitant expression. Yu Ruifeng's face turned serious. I've been through life and death situations with your master. If nephew Lu treats me like an outsider, you're not giving me face, and also not giving your master face. Leng Shiqi immediately changed his tone and said, Greetings, Martial Uncle. That's right. Come, sit. Yu Ruifeng smiled very brightly, as if he was really meeting a junior of his own family. Leng Shiqi sat on Yu Ruifeng's left side and said, Martial Uncle Yu, I'm actually here for the matter of the profound Yang sect. Yu Ruifeng secretly thought that it was indeed so. His face showed a bit of admiration. Nephew Lu, I already know that you found out that the profound Yang sect colluded with the Zhu Lu country to smuggle refined iron. This is a great contribution. You were able to defeat the profound Yang sect with Li Xianyang and Li Feizhou as a spirit pulse stage practitioner. This is really impressive. Now, the most talked about name in the entire West Desolation province is you. You're really worthy of being Brother Chu's disciple. Nephew Lu will definitely be someone extraordinary in the future. Leng Shiqi said modestly, it was just a fluke. Oh, I also specially prepared a small gift for Martial Uncle Yu. It's just that I'm new here and don't know what Martial Uncle likes. I hope Martial Uncle doesn't take offense. After saying that, he took out 8 mustard seed bags from his bosom. He lined up the 8 mustard seed bags and made a please gesture to Yu Ruifeng. A faint gleam flashed across Yu Ruifeng's eyes. He picked up a mustard seed bag and opened it. Even though he was an inspector, he could not help but reveal a greedy look. This mustard seed bag was filled to the brim with cultivation resources. And there were as many as 8 such mustard seed bags. Yu Ruifeng took a deep breath, then put down the mustard seed bag and asked, Nephew, what do you mean by that? Leng Shiqi smiled and said, Martial Nephew is just being filial to Martial Uncle. There is no other meaning. Since nephew has such good intentions, as your Martial Uncle, if I were to refuse, wouldn't I be wasting my good intentions? Although Yu Ruifeng said this, he immediately added, however, it doesn't make sense for me to take Martial Nephew's things for free. How about this? Martial Uncle can grant you 3 reasonable conditions, how about it? Hearing this, Leng Shiqi thought to himself, it's done. And it was much smoother than he had imagined. The things he took out were actually half of the profound Yang sect's resources. Originally, these were promised to 9 Leave, but 9 Leave had gone out on his own, and it was unknown when he would return. Rather than letting these resources collect dust, it was better to use them to solve many hidden troubles. As for the resources promised to 9 Leave, he also had a way to get them, but it would take some time. As the saying goes, money makes the world go round. Leng Shiqi did not believe that Yu Ruifeng was a person who did not do anything. Now that he had tested him, he found that he was indeed a very greedy person. However, the more greedy a person was, the easier it was to deal with them. As long as you could give them enough benefits, they would give you the corresponding benefits. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said, these resources should be given to Martial Uncle. It just so happens that Martial Nephew has a few headaches recently, and I would like to ask Martial Uncle Yu for help. Yu Ruifeng smiled and said, Nephew, there's no harm in asking. Leng Shiqi raised a finger and said, Martial Nephew wants to know, how big is the credit for destroying the profound Yang sect and breaking the Zhu Lu country's plan to smuggle iron? The reason why he asked this was because he was afraid that Yu Ruifeng would divide his credit. From beginning to end, this matter was arranged by Leng Shiqi, but after all, he was only a supervisor. Above him, there was still the supervisor in charge of the North County, Duan Chun, and the supervisor in front of him, Yu Ruifeng. No matter how big Leng Shiqi's credit was, it had to be reported, so whether it was Duan Chun or Yu Ruifeng, they would definitely divide a part of his credit. So Leng Shiqi wanted to take the credit that should belong to him. All the credit. He always remembered why he joined the Dark Thunder Guard. He did not join to make money, but to climb up. However, his qualifications were too shallow. If he wanted to climb up, he must have far more credit than others. So credit was the most important to Ling Shiqi. Yu Ruifeng's expression did not change, but his tone was not as enthusiastic as before. Nephew's credit is indeed big, and it involves the Zhu Lu country. I have already reported this matter to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters. How about this? I will add another report and put in a few good words for you. When Ling Shiqi heard this, he knew that Yu Ruifeng must have taken a part of his credit. Now that Yu Ruifeng agreed, Ling Shiqi felt that he was not too slow. Then, he stretched out 2 fingers. Uncle Master Yu, you know that Master is an itinerant cultivator after all. That's why I've always been shy about money. So I plan to do a small business near Lanqi City, but I don't know if this is in accordance with the rules of the Dark Thunder Guard. He was naturally talking about the matter of him openly supporting the smuggling of iron from several large families. Regarding this matter, he had also given a lot of benefits to Duan Chun to help him suppress it. However, Ling Shiqi was no longer satisfied with a mere Lanqi City. He needed someone of a higher level to be his backer. Speaking of this, Yu Ruifeng waved his hand and said casually, as the saying goes, blocking one's path to wealth is like killing one's parents. Nephew, go ahead and do it. Nothing will happen with me around. Ling Shiqi did not expect Yu Ruifeng to agree so readily. He raised a 3rd finger and said, Martial Uncle Yu, everyone knows that I destroyed the Profound Yang sect, but I also lost a lot of my Dark Thunder Guard subordinates. Especially with the death of a Dark Thunder envoy, it can be said to be a heavy loss. Now, Martial Nephew needs a lot of manpower. Of course, Martial Nephew also knows that the Dark Thunder Guard has always been in short supply. So why don't you let me recruit them myself? Yu Ruifeng was an astute person. He immediately knew that Ling Shiqi wanted to cultivate his own team, but this was human nature. However, recruiting Dark Thunder Guards was not a small matter. He said in a deep voice, I can let you recruit Dark Thunder Guards and Dark Thunder Envoys yourself, but there can't be too many people. I'll only give you 50 Dark Thunder Guards and 3 Dark Thunder Envoys. Ling Shiqi smiled in his heart. Yu Ruifeng had given him more spots than he had expected, so he agreed without hesitation. He had successfully completed his mission this time. Not only did he solve all future problems, but he also managed to climb up Yu Ruifeng's support. Just as he was about to leave, Yu Ruifeng said, That's right, nephew, don't walk around casually after you go back. We might make a trip to Zhu Lu country in a while. Zhu Lu country? Ling Shiqi couldn't help but be puzzled. However, he immediately thought that this might have something to do with him destroying Zhu Lu country's transportation of refined iron. Yu Ruifeng said, Zhu Lu country dared to transport refined iron in the imperial territory. The imperial court will definitely send people to investigate. As the inspector of the Western Baron province, I will definitely go. You are the biggest contributor to this matter. You also have conclusive evidence in your hands. When the time comes, you will come with me. Chapter 341. Ling Shiqi couldn't help but be stunned when he suddenly heard that he was going to Zhu Lu country. His thoughts turned quickly as doubts arose in his heart. It was true that the Dark Lightning Guards monitored the entire Thunderfire dynasty, but how could they control Zhu Lu country? He had indeed caught evidence of Zhu Lu country secretly transporting refined iron. Not only did he have a large amount of refined iron as evidence, but he also had Jill as a witness. It could be said that he had caught both the man and the goods. However, even if they were going to negotiate with Zhu Lu country, it shouldn't be the Dark Lightning Guard's turn. There were hundreds of court officials above and the border army outside. How could they let the Dark Lightning Guards go to Zhu Lu country to investigate? Yu Ruifeng seemed to have seen through Ling Shiqi's doubts. He said, The reason why this matter fell on us is because the dynasty doesn't want to fall out with Zhu Lu country. After all, both sides are still allies on the surface. Although Zhu Lu country is only a small country and its territory isn't even as big as the West Desolate province, it is still a country in the end. According to the division of forces, it is still 30% stronger than the top forces. Now that the Thunderfire dynasty isn't stable internally, it's not good to have any more incidents. That's why this task was given to the Dark Lightning Guards. However, it will be some time before the imperial order is issued. You just have to wait in Lanqi City. I will send someone to inform you when the time comes. Ling Shiqi finally understood. This time, Zhulu country's smuggling of refined iron was a big matter. However, the Thunderfire dynasty didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so they just let them go through the motions. Of course, they would definitely be able to reap some benefits from this trip, so he was willing to make a trip. At the same time, Ling Shiqi also received a message from Yu Ruifeng's words. The Thunderfire dynasty wasn't peaceful internally. However, he didn't care too much. As the saying went, the emperor was far away. He was now at the border of the dynasty, so no matter how much trouble there was in the dynasty, it wouldn't affect the West Desolate province. Afterward, Ling Shiqi bade farewell to Yu Ruifeng and returned to Lanqi City as quickly as possible. This trip took a total of 4 days. When he returned, the other 4 families that were in charge of the smuggling of refined iron in the cities had also been eliminated. Carts after carts of cultivation resources were delivered into Dark Thunder Manor's courtyard one after another, causing everyone's eyes to turn red with envy. However, these resources were all sealed in the treasury and were not distributed to everyone. They were to be saved up for 9 leave. When Ling Shiqi returned, Qiu Cheng and Xiao Qian came looking for him with tired faces. Qiu Cheng didn't care about etiquette. He drank a large pot of tea and said, "Sir, you're back. We've been busy these past few days. They destroyed the Xianyang sect and several families. Although these people deserved it, the Dark Thunder Guards also had to go through a lot of procedures. These things had been done by Qiu Cheng all the time. These days, he almost didn't sleep." Xiao Qian, on the other hand, was responsible for sealing up resources, handing over missions, and managing the Dark Lightning Guards. They did have a lot of power in their hands, but they were exhausted. Ling Shiqi also knew that there were too few Dark Lightning envoys in his Dark Lightning Manor. Only Qiu Cheng and Xiao Qian were enough to keep him busy. Thus, he said, "Don't worry. I've already gotten the permission of the inspector. I can recruit 50 Dark Lightning Guards and 3 Dark Lightning envoys." Qiu Cheng and Xiao Qian were both happy and sad at the same time. They were happy that there were people to share some of the responsibility and pressure, but at the same time, they also had to share some of the power. Ling Shiqi said meaningfully, "You're both veterans of Dark Thunder Manor in Mist Chi City. You'll have to put in more effort in the future." These words were to reassure them. Even if there were new Dark Lightning envoys in the future, the 2 of them would still be the most important. Xiao Qian and Xiao Qian were also slightly relieved. "You 2 have been very busy recently. I'll do the recruitment myself." Ling Shiqi directly took the responsibility for this matter, so the 2 of them naturally had nothing to say. From the next day onwards, Dark Thunder Manor began recruiting Dark Lightning Guards and Dark Lightning envoys. This news attracted a lot of attention. It wasn't because of anything else. Dark Thunder Manor had just recruited 30 Dark Lightning Guards a while ago. Now they were recruiting again. Was the Dark Lightning Guard so short of people? However, this was the Dark Lightning Guard. Being able to enter the Dark Lightning Guard was equivalent to having an iron rice bowl, so it still attracted a lot of people. In particular, Ling Shiqi was in the limelight recently. Many young elites came because of his reputation. The originally deserted streets of Dark Thunder Manor became much more lively. Ling Shiqi also became busy. Being personally recruited by him as a supervisor, it was naturally very strict. 80% of the people were rejected by him. Even so, there were still a lot of people who flocked to him. In 4 to 5 days, he recruited 50 Dark Lightning Guards in the Spirit Transformation Realm and 3 Dark Lightning Envoys in the Spirit Pulse Realm. In fact, these people were all assassins from the Blood Cloth Pavilion. Now, Ling Shiqi had 120 Dark Lightning Guards under him. Most of them were from the Blood Cloth Pavilion. 3 of the 5 Dark Lightning Envoys were also Blood Cloth assassins from the Blood Cloth Pavilion. It could be said that Dark Thunder Manor in Mist Chi City was completely under his control. On this day, Ling Shiqi called Xiao Cheng and Xiao Qian over. When they came in, they saw that there were already 3 Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators sitting there. They knew that these 3 people were the 3 new Dark Lightning Envoys. Sit, these 3 are the new Dark Lightning Envoys. Ling Shiqi raised his hand and said. This is old Mr. Guan Feihong. He's in the late stage of the Spirit Pulse Realm. The old man sitting beside Ling Shiqi stood up and cupped his hands. He had a kind smile on his face. He looked gentle and amiable, giving people a good impression. This old man is Guan Feihong. I'm already so old, but I'm still able to receive Lord Lu's favor and become a Dark Lightning Envoy. In the future, I'll have to ask the 2 of you to take care of me. When Xiao Qian and Xiao Cheng heard Ling Shiqi say that this person was in the late stage of the Spirit Pulse Realm, their hearts tightened. However, seeing Guan Feihong like this, they thought that he was easy to get along with, so they said a few polite words. Actually, Guan Feihong had another name. Black-striped blood-clothed assassin, heart-soul. Seeing through people's hearts, hooking their souls. Although he was old and could no longer use his full strength, Ling Shiqi had specially picked him because he liked his scheming and intelligence. Ling Shiqi thought that his shrewdness was not bad, but it would be better if he had a think tank by his side to give him advice. Moreover, he often went into closed-door cultivation. It was important to have someone outside who could take care of things. Following this, Ling Shiqi pointed at an ordinary-looking middle-aged man. He was the kind that could not be found in a crowd. This person stood up and smiled. This one is Qian Ming. I'm in the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse Realm. This is my first time here, please forgive me. Qian Ming was actually Thousand Face. Thousand Face's ability was too useful. Ling Shiqi had him change his identity and stay by his side. As for the last person, he was wearing tight black clothes. He hugged a thin sword and had a cold expression. He only said 3 words coldly, Qin Jinshan. Qin Jinshan's cold attitude made the others a bit unhappy, especially Xiao Cheng, who was already frowning. He was actually a famous black-striped blood-clothed assassin in the Western Desolate Province, Ghost Sword. He had once assassinated a Spirit Aperture Realm expert with his late-stage Spirit Pulse Realm cultivation. Chapter 342. The 3 blood-clothed assassins that Ling Shiqi specially transferred from the blood-clothing pavilion all had their own areas of expertise. Guan Feihong was astute and could help him come up with plans. Gan Ming was ever-changing and many things in the dark could be done through him. As for Qin Jinshan, he was a powerful fighting force. Under Ling Shiqi, whether it was Qiao Cheng, Xiao Qian, Guan Feihong, or Gan Ming, they all had their own strengths. But the only thing they lacked was an extremely strong fighting force. Now that he had Qin Jinshan, he finally made up for this and didn't need to do everything himself. This also saved him a lot of time to cultivate. After they got to know each other, Ling Shiqi said, "Send people to send invitations to all the families in the cities. Tell them that I will be hosting a banquet in 3 days at the Drunken Fragrance House." They looked at each other and guessed what Ling Shiqi was going to do. Soon after, the news spread to the 5 cities under his jurisdiction, and all the big clans heard about it. When they received the invitations, they were all secretly delighted. They were also very clear about the situation of the 6 great families in Mist Chi City. With the support of Ling Shiqi, the 6 great families could be said to have made a lot of money, making people jealous. Now that this good thing had happened to them, they were naturally secretly happy. Moreover, they also knew that Ling Shiqi was a ruthless person. Since he took office, he had already destroyed several families. He even destroyed the dignified spirit cultivator sect, the Profound Yang sect. Now, he was even more famous. They definitely couldn't afford to offend such a person, nor did they dare to. Thus, they hurriedly rushed to Mist Chi City, afraid that they would be a step too late. And this news also spread to the supervisor in charge of the North region, Duan Chun. At this moment, Duan Chun was talking with another supervisor, Yuzimo. Yuzimo was in charge of supervising the area adjacent to Lingshichi. They were talking about Lingshichi. Master Duan, Lu Xingji destroyed the Profound Yang sect and destroyed Zhu Lu country's conspiracy. Now, everyone in the North County knows the name Lu Xingji. Yuzimo's words were full of deep meaning, and the meaning of his words was very obvious. The people in the North region only knew Lu Xingji of the Dark Thunder Guards, but not him. Moreover, Duan Chun didn't know that Lingshichi destroyed the Profound Yang sect. He even found out later than Yu Ruifeng. Lingshichi actually did such a big thing, such a big contribution, without telling him, and did it himself. Duan Chun already had a huge prejudice against Lingshichi. As for the resources that Lingshichi gave him before, how could it be compared to the contribution of destroying the Profound Yang sect? In fact, Duan Chun had a bad impression of Lingshichi from the beginning because he knew that Lingshichi had entered through the back door. Especially when Lingshichi became a supervisor as soon as he entered the Dark Thunder Guards, he was even more dissatisfied. However, this was Yu Ruifeng's order, so he had to follow it. Originally, he thought that Lingshichi wouldn't have a good time even if he became a supervisor, so he didn't pay too much attention to him. But later, Lingshichi suddenly sent a large number of resources to him and asked him to suppress the matter of smuggling. This let Duan Chun know that Lingshichi wasn't that simple. In the face of benefits, Duan Chun tacitly agreed. But this time, Lingshichi didn't say anything to him and directly took all the credit for himself. This made Duan Chun extremely angry. At this moment, Duan Chun's expression was extremely ugly. However, at this moment, a Dark Thunder Guard ran in and said something in his ear. Bang! Duan Chun smashed the table beside him. He shouted, "How dare you! This Lu Xingji is really reckless and audacious." Yuzimo was also stunned for a moment, but he was secretly happy. He asked tentatively, "Master Duan, what did that Lu Xingji do this time?" "Humph." Duan Chun snorted. "This person is insatiably greedy. He actually gathered all the patriarchs of the families under his jurisdiction and openly smuggled. Isn't a misty city enough for him to eat? Now he wants to eat 5 cities." Yuzimo was also shocked. In fact, he also secretly did some smuggling business, but he definitely didn't dare to interfere. If Lingshichi succeeded, then he could just lie at home and count money every day. This really made him jealous. "Master Duan, Lu Xingji disregarded the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards and openly smuggled. This is a heinous crime. In my humble opinion, Master Duan can punish him directly." At this moment, Duan Chun suddenly calmed down. He thought carefully. Why was Lingshichi so bold? Who gave him such confidence? He faintly felt that there was something fishy. He said in a deep voice, "This is indeed a heinous crime. According to the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards, he should be sentenced to life imprisonment at least. However, Lu Xingji is not stupid. On the contrary, he is very shrewd. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been willing to destroy the Xianyang sect. Since he dares to do this, he must have the confidence. No, I have to ask around first." Duan Chun was so cautious that Yuzimo couldn't say anything more. However, he still felt indignant. Lingshichi was just a kid in the spiritual pulse realm. How could he be the supervisor? How could he get such a big credit for destroying the Xianyang sect? How dare he openly smuggle a large amount of resources? In comparison, Yuzimo seemed to be a mediocre person. In his opinion, Lingshichi was someone who used connections to sneak into the Dark Thunder Guards. He even guessed that someone secretly helped him destroy the Xianyang sect. Otherwise, how could he, a spiritual pulse realm cultivator, kill Li Xianyang and Li Feizhou, 2 spiritual aperture realm cultivators? Yuzimo secretly harbored hatred in his heart. As for the Lingshichi that they were discussing, the patriarchs of the clans in the 5 cities had already been sent away. This banquet went very smoothly. It went so smoothly that Lingshichi didn't say much. The whole time, it was Guan Feihong and the people of the 6 great clans who were talking. With the example of the 6 great clans, everyone happily agreed to Leng Shiqi's request. At this point, all the clans in the area under Leng Shiqi's jurisdiction had defected to him. His power in the 5 cities could be said to be unparalleled for a time. However, Leng Shiqi didn't care about this false reputation. After arranging everything, he handed over all the matters of the Dark Thunder Manor to the 5 Dark Thunder envoys. As for himself, he entered a state of seclusion. He fought with Li Xianyang and Li Feizhou, the 2 spiritual aperture realm cultivators. He gained a lot of insights and even saw the path to breaking through to the spiritual aperture realm more clearly. However, he wasn't in a hurry to break through to the spiritual aperture realm because he still had important things to do before leaving. That was to open his spiritual pulse. He had several cultivation methods. Excluding the 10 that he had already opened, he still had 32 spiritual pulses that he could open. As long as he opened these spiritual pulses, his strength would be able to take another step forward. Chapter 343. For Leng Shiqi, who was at the 9th level of the spirit vein realm, opening a spirit vein was not a difficult task. He had many profound techniques and the spirit energy in his body was a mutated gray spirit energy. As long as he controlled it carefully, opening a spirit vein was only a matter of time. Leng Shiqi could open a spirit vein almost every day. If this incredible speed was spread out, no one would believe it. It wasn't until a month later that he had actually opened up the remaining 32 spirit veins. Now, Leng Shiqi had opened up more than 20 spirit veins in his body. The spiritual meridian had a very strong effect on the spirit cultivator. Previously, the 10 spirit veins that Leng Shiqi had opened were all used to amplify spells and illusions. However, he didn't have many spells and their power wasn't particularly strong. Hence, it didn't show. Now that he had opened up the indefinite truth and the ultimate golden mysterious yang art spirit veins, most of them were gathered in his arms and chest. Whether it was the foundation of his strength or his explosive power, it had greatly increased. In this month, although he did not deliberately cultivate spirit techniques, his strength had greatly improved. It was a pity that opening up spirit veins required full concentration, so he did not use the mind-splitting technique to separate a part of his consciousness to deduce spirit techniques. However, Leng Shiqi was still very satisfied. After a month of closed-door cultivation, he did not have any more spirit veins to open and was ready to go out and take a look. Calculating the time, in these 2 days, the various large families in the city should have handed over their offerings. He should also go and replenish a large amount of spirit stones. Leng Shiqi had just pushed open the door when he saw Qiu Cheng and Guan Feihong walking in together. Moreover, they both had strange expressions on their faces. Guan Feihong cupped his hands and said, "Master, we are requesting to see you." "En? What happened?" Leng Shiqi was a little surprised. If it was before, there were some matters in Dark Thunder Manor that required him to make decisions. But now, Dark Thunder Manor had sufficient manpower. Furthermore, with Qiu Cheng and Guan Feihong managing it together, it could be said that everything was in order. Now that the 2 of them came together, something troublesome must have happened. Qiu Cheng said, "Master, the city lord's manor was robbed." Leng Shiqi frowned. "Stolen? Why should we, the Dark Thunder Guards, care about this kind of thing?" Qiu Cheng explained, not only the city lord manor, but even the 6 great clans were robbed. The things they stole weren't very precious, but the thief was unusually arrogant. Every time he stole something, he would send a letter to the patriarch to tell him what he was going to steal. In the end, he always succeeded. The first was the Zhong family. The Zhong family's patriarch, Zhong Cheng, didn't take it seriously at first. Sir also knew that this person had always been cautious and had guards all over his residence. But the next day, he found out that his beloved jade had been stolen. From that day onwards, the 6 great clans were robbed one after another. Even the city lord's mansion was robbed last night. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi was finally moved. The city lord's mansion had Sun Gang, an expert at the late stage of the spirit aperture realm. Apart from him, there were also hundreds of city guards. Even with such a lineup, the items could still be stolen. This showed that the thief's ability was not small. Guan Feihong took out a square handkerchief and continued, every time this person stole something, he would leave this square handkerchief at the place where he left it. There are a few words written on it. Sir, please take a look. Leng Shiqi took the square handkerchief. From the material in his hands, he could tell that it was an ordinary square handkerchief. However, there were 6 words written on it, don't look back on worldly affairs. Don't look back? Great thief, don't look back. Seeing these words, Leng Shiqi raised his eyebrows. After he took over as the supervisor, in order to get rid of dissidents, he even used Imo Huaishou's name to transfer Gong Sun Bing's trusted aides. He didn't expect Imo Huaishou to actually appear in Misty Chi City. Guan Feihong said, this great thief don't look back. According to my estimation, his cultivation is at least at the spirit aperture realm. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to steal from the city lord's mansion without being discovered by Sun Gang. Leng Shiqi nodded. This was the same as what he had expected. However, Leng Shiqi still had some doubts. Even so, the job of catching the thief should belong to the city guards. Moreover, the city lord's mansion was robbed. They should be contributing even more. Qiu Cheng and Guan Feihong looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Guan Feihong took out another piece of paper and said seriously, this was accidentally found by a servant in the courtyard this morning. Leng Shiqi lowered his head to take a look. There was also a sentence written on it, I would like to borrow the Dark Thunder Mansion's supervisory seal to take a look. Leng Shiqi frowned. Mo Huaishou actually had his eyes on him. The supervisory seal was the seal he used to exercise his authority as a supervisor. Mo Huaishou actually wanted to steal the supervisory seal? Unconsciously, a cold glint flashed across Leng Shiqi's eyes. At the same time, he understood why Qiu Cheng and Guan Feihong came to find him. Even the heavily guarded city lord's mansion had been robbed. Now that the supervisory seal was targeted, the two of them definitely had no confidence in solving it. How many people are there in Dark Thunder Mansion now? Leng Shiqi asked. Qiu Cheng said, Sir, we've been busy recently. There are only about 40 people in the mansion. Do you want me to urgently transfer some people back? Leng Shiqi's gaze was as sharp as a sword. He said coldly, no need. 40 people are enough. Come closer. This. The two of them hesitated when they heard Leng Shiqi's words. Just do it. If Mo Huaishou dares to come tonight, he won't be able to return. The two of them nodded and went to prepare according to Leng Shiqi's instructions. Meanwhile, Leng Shiqi walked to the meeting hall and began to arrange things. Soon, it was night time. Everything in Dark Thunder Mansion was as usual. The only unusual thing was that a square box was placed on the table in the meeting hall. That box contained the supervisory seal. This action seemed to be purposely giving the supervisory seal to Mo Huaishou, but it looked more like a trap. In Dark Thunder Manor, a servant bowed slightly as he walked past the meeting hall with small steps. Soon, he turned into a corridor. That person's eyes immediately lit up, and the corners of his mouth curled up. TSK, there are 30 to 40 hidden sentries in all directions. There are even a few Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators hiding in the meeting hall. What era is it now? You still want to play such a lowly trick? Aren't you underestimating me too much? I didn't say that I had to come tonight to retrieve the supervisory seal. I'll forgive you for a few days first. Immediately after, the figure of this servant quietly disappeared into the darkness. In the blink of an eye, that person directly appeared outside the walls of Dark Thunder Mansion. When he turned around, his servant's appearance actually changed into an elegant young master. He left with his hands behind his back. At the same time, a figure stood on top of the Misty Chi City's city tower. He was the city lord of Misty Chi City, Sun Gang. His gaze was fixed in the direction of Dark Thunder Mansion. He also wanted to know if Dark Thunder Mansion would be robbed tonight. Not long after the elegant young master left, someone blocked his path. It was Ling Shiqi. Instead, he turned around and left, leaving behind a sentence, "Then why don't you hurry back and help His Excellency?" Qiu Qing felt a little uncomfortable. He knew that the Ling Shiqi in front of him was not Ling Shiqi, but Qian Ming. In Qiu Cheng's impression, Qian Ming was initially more respectful and modest. However, as he slowly familiarized himself with and gained some power, he gradually did not put Qiu Cheng in his eyes. However, Qian Ming was indeed very skilled. His disguising skills were unparalleled in Dark Thunder manner. In order to capture Mo Huaishou tonight, he played a crucial role. Even though Qiu Cheng was a little dissatisfied with his attitude, he did not dare to cause trouble in case he messed up the plan. He secretly gritted his teeth and followed with his men. At this moment, in Dark Thunder manner, Ling Shiqi hurriedly walked into the meeting hall. However, his footsteps stopped the moment he entered the hall. He said, "Come out, Mo Huaishou has already escaped." A person walked out from the shadows of the meeting hall. He hugged a thin sword. It was Ghost Sword Qin Jinshin. Qin Jinshin had always been a man of few words. He just stood there silently. Ling Shiqi asked, "Is there anything wrong with the supervisory seal?" Qin Jinshin shook his head slightly. Ling Shiqi walked forward and said, "It said that Mo Huaishou's methods are strange. It's better to confirm it." As he spoke, he picked up the box containing the supervisory seal as if he wanted to check it. However, the moment he picked up the box, something unexpected happened. He did not hear the sound of a long sword being unsheathed. A thin sword had already stabbed towards Ling Shiqi like a ghost. What a fast sword! Ling Shiqi did not expect Qin Jinshin to suddenly attack. This sword was very fast, so fast that he could not dodge it at all. With a wang sound, a huge amount of spiritual power surged out from Ling Shiqi's body and instantly formed a protective spiritual armor. Qin Jinshin's sword looked simple and unadorned, but it hid a terrifying power and killing intent. His sword actually pierced through the protective spiritual armor in an instant. However, the protective spiritual armor had at least bought half a breath of time. Ling Shiqi's body twisted like a snake and narrowly avoided the sword. Qin Jinshin's sword shook and a wave of sword chi with a deathly aura shot out and entered Ling Shiqi's body. Ling Shiqi tapped his feet on the ground and retreated several hundred feet away. He stared at Qin Jinshin in shock. Qin Jinshin's cultivation was only at the late stage of the spirit pulse realm, but his sword was abnormally terrifying. Not only did it easily pierce through his protective spiritual armor, the deathly sword chi was also corroding his flesh like maggots. Qin Jinshin said with a bit of sarcasm, "So my lord has already broken through to the spirit aperture realm." Ling Shiqi knew that he had already been exposed when he appeared here, but he did not know how he had been exposed. Everything that happened tonight seemed to be out of his control. At this moment, the ground under his feet suddenly made a ka-ka sound. The ground in the courtyard of Dark Thunder Manor cracked and rays of dazzling golden light shone out from the cracks. Immediately after, a golden sun broke through the ground, as if a sun had risen in the night sky. Rank 5 Spiritual Technique, Bright Sun Mystic Yang Palm. A figure rose up with the sun in his hand. There was a blood mark on his forehead. It was Ling Shiqi. The real Ling Shiqi. The sun was fierce and everything was revealed. The other Ling Shiqi took off the disguise on her body and revealed an exquisite figure. However, this person's face was covered with a mask. This was Mo Huaishou. What was unexpected was that Mo Huaishou was actually a woman. Mo Huaishou would never have thought that Ling Shiqi had been hiding underground for a long time to find an opportunity to give her a fierce attack. Although Ling Shiqi was still at the 9th level of the Spirit Pulse realm, he had already opened up 42 Spirit Pulses. In addition, with the support of several profound techniques and mutated spiritual energy, his attack was not inferior to a Spirit Aperture realm's attack. Mo Huaishou's palm continuously moved and shot out rays of green light. If one looked carefully, the green light was actually filled with small insects. Those small insects looked extremely weak, but each of them could actually swallow the light of the bright sun mystic yang palm. In the blink of an eye, more than half of Leng Shiqi's palm energy was swallowed. Seeing this, Leng Shiqi's heart moved and he said in surprise, "Gu technique. You are from Zhulu country?" Chapter 345. As Leng Shiqi had to make a trip to Zhu Road country soon, he took some time to look at the information regarding Zhu Road country and the 6 western region countries. The Gu technique was a peculiar cultivation method unique to the 6 kingdoms of the western region. But among the 6 countries of the western region, Zhulu country was famous for its Gu techniques because there was a Gu god sect in Zhulu country that specialized in cultivating Gu techniques. This Gu god sect was even worshipped as the national religion in Zhu Road country. According to the division of power, it was considered a first-rate power. Therefore, when Leng Shiqi saw Mo Huaishou use the Gu technique, his first reaction was that she was from Zhu Road country. Leng Shiqi roared, "The dynasty strictly forbids spirit cultivators above the spirit aperture realm from the 6 western region countries to enter. Zhu Road country sure has guts. Do you really think there's no one in our dynasty? Do you really think there's no one in the Dark Thunder Guards?" At this moment, he really had the intention to kill. No matter what Mo Huaishou's motive was for coming to Lan Chi City, and no matter how she sneaked in, she had indeed violated the Thunder Flame dynasty's ban. As long as he killed her, he could pin the crime of being a spy, which would be a great contribution. Of course, it would be best if he could capture her alive. However, Leng Shiqi still had some self-awareness. With just him and Qin Jianchen, they did have a chance to kill Mo Huaishou, but it was impossible to capture her alive. Mo Huaishou was also helpless. She was sneak attacked by Leng Shiqi's glorious sun mysterious sun palm and had no choice but to use the spirit-devouring Gu to defend. The spirit-devouring Gu could devour a large amount of spiritual energy in a short period of time and was the nemesis of various spiritual techniques. However, there was a limit to the amount of spiritual energy that each spirit-devouring Gu could withstand. Leng Shiqi's glorious sun mysterious sun palm was at the Great Circle realm. When he used it, it was extremely powerful and was not weaker than the initial stage of the spirit aperture realm. One by one, the spirit-devouring Gu exploded from the huge amount of spiritual energy, but the glorious sun was also quickly fading. Mo Huaishou's heart ached. The spirit-devouring Gu was extremely difficult to cultivate. It could be said that each one was extremely precious, but in the blink of an eye, dozens of them died. What gave her a headache was that she had exposed her identity because of this. From now on, it would be difficult for her to move around the western desolate province. Unbeknownst to her, a pitch-black sword ray quietly pierced towards her. The speed of the sword ray was unimaginably fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived before her. It was Qin Jianchen. Mo Huaishou coldly snorted. 2 balls of dark green light condensed in her hands, which rippled with dense poisonous gas. She clapped her hands together, and 2 balls of green light shot out toward Qin Jianchen and Leng Shiqi respectively. Leng Shiqi shouted, "Retreat!" Qin Jianchen's sword attack came to a halt, and he was forced to retreat. Immediately after, 2 huge explosions resounded in the courtyard of Dark Thunder Manor. It could be heard clearly even from miles away. Qian Ming, Qiu Cheng, and the other 3 Dark Lightning envoys were on their way here. They clearly felt the aura of the explosion. Their bodies paused for a moment as they revealed looks of shock. Then, they sped up even faster. The green light in the courtyard was tyrannical. Violent spiritual energy blasted out, overturning all the houses and floor tiles in the courtyard. From the ashes of the huge explosion, a figure wearing demonic armor walked out. Leng Shiqi had activated the demonic beast blood rune armor at the crucial moment. Even so, cracks began to appear on the armor. It was obvious how terrifying the explosion was. As for Qin Jianchen, although he had retreated in time, the power of the explosion was too great. At this moment, the skin and flesh on his back were rolled up, and there was a faint green light corroding his flesh. Ling Shiqi's eyes flashed with a shocking murderous intent. However, when he lifted his foot, he realized that he had stepped on something that was unusually sticky. He lowered his head and saw that the ground was actually covered with spider webs. These spider webs were not very tough, but they were very sticky, making it difficult for people to move. And that Mo Huaisho was long gone. Ling Shiqi frowned. He had put in a lot of effort to set up this trap tonight. Mo Huaisho's disguise was indeed brilliant, and he was not inferior to Thousand Face. However, in Ling Shiqi's eyes, nothing could be hidden. No matter how much you changed your appearance and voice, you could not change the spiritual energy in your body. Ling Shiqi had long memorized the spiritual energy of everyone in Dark Thunder Manor. The moment Mo Huaisho entered Dark Thunder Manor, he already knew. The reason why he did not act rashly was that he also realized that Mo Huaisho had a powerful movement spiritual technique that was similar to teleportation. That was why he created a fake Ling Shiqi show. However, now that he knew that Mo Huaisho was most likely from Zhu Lu country, destroyed Dark Thunder Manor's courtyard, and injured his subordinates, his heart was filled with murderous intent. At this moment, he heard footsteps. It was Guan Feihong and the rest who had returned. Ling Shiqi removed his demonic beast blood rune armor. Guan Feihong ran to the front and asked anxiously, "Sir, are you okay?" Ling Shiqi shook his head and said, "I'm fine." Qin Jianshan, on the other hand, suffered heavy injuries. Quickly take him away for treatment. Use the best resources. The few of them also saw Qin Jianshan's injuries and hurriedly sent people to take him away. Guan Feihong looked at the spider webs and traces of dead spirit devouring parasites on the ground. His expression changed slightly as he asked, "Sir, these seem to be traces of Gu techniques." "That's right." Ling Shiqi nodded and said, "That Mo Huaisho is proficient in Gu techniques. He is most likely from Zhu Lu country. A spirit aperture realm expert proficient in Gu techniques. Mo Huaisho is most likely from the Gu God sect. Only the Gu God sect can cultivate such a Gu expert." Guan Feihong's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise as he said in a deep voice. Ling Shiqi glanced at Guan Feihong. He seemed to know a lot about the Gu God sect. Xiao Qian took the supervisory seal from the meeting room. He let out a sigh of relief and said, "Sir, the supervisory seal is still here." Ling Shiqi picked up the supervisory seal and carefully looked at it a few times. After confirming that it wasn't swapped, he nodded. The supervisory seal wasn't lost, which meant that he didn't lose his face. If Mo Huaisho really took away the supervisory seal, then he wouldn't be able to face anyone anymore. Of course, he didn't plan to let Mo Huaisho go so easily. However, he thought about it again. He didn't have to fight to the death with Mo Huaisho. His thoughts turned quickly. In the past, Mo Huaisho was probably someone who took pleasure in stealing. After all, she didn't steal anything especially precious. However, now that Ling Shiqi knew that she was from Zhu Lu country, everything changed. What was Mo Huaisho's motive for doing this? Also, he had just ruined Zhu Lu country's plan to collect large amounts of fine iron, and Mo Huaisho came to Lan Chi City right after. Was this just a coincidence? Following that, Ling Shiqi said a few words and returned to his room. He also instructed that no one was allowed to disturb him. Then, he activated the Fate skill. Chapter 346. Mo Huaisho was like a night elf as she sped through Misty Chi City. What was even stranger was that she would transform into a different person every time she passed by a place. One moment she was a young girl, the next moment she was a young man. If one looked closely, they would realize that she relied on the mask on her face to change her appearance. Soon, Mo Huaisho left Misty Chi City without being noticed by all the guards. The reason she came to Misty Chi City was to investigate Jill's collection of iron essence and meet Ling Shiqi at the same time. She wanted to meet this person who single-handedly destroyed the profound Yang sect and ruined Zhu Lugua's plan. Who would have thought that her probing would actually expose her own identity? But in that situation, if she didn't use her gu arts, she would definitely be injured. This was also because Leng Shiqi and Qin Jinshan's abilities were far beyond her expectations. How would she have thought that two people in the spiritual pulse realm would have such powerful abilities? What she needed to do now was to leave the Western Desolate Province before the news spread. Otherwise, once the news of her identity spread, it would be very difficult to leave the Thunderflame dynasty. But when she passed through the forest several kilometers away from Misty Chi City, she saw red, blue, and yellow lights suddenly blossoming in the sky. A figure walked out of the lights. Mo Huisho's figure stopped abruptly. Her eyes focused. This person was wearing a large black cloak and a mask on his face. There was chaos on the mask. She knew that this person was coming for her, and he didn't come with good intentions. This person was naturally Leng Shiqi, who was wearing his own mask. He activated the Fate skill and locked onto Mo Huisho's aura and figure, directly teleporting over. Mo Huisho saw that Leng Shiqi's cultivation was only in the spiritual pulse realm, so she took the initiative to attack. Her hands moved quickly, and purple poisonous gas rose. Leng Shiqi's white eyes under his mask could clearly see that this wasn't poisonous gas. This was clearly a combination of countless tiny goo worms. If he accidentally inhaled some, the consequences would be unimaginable. He grasped the air in his hand, and a rank 4 spirit sword appeared. Suddenly, hundreds of sword chi surged out like the birth of the sun, sweeping in all directions. The scorching sword chi instantly broke through 80% of the poison gas. This was the rank 4 spiritual skill, Shaoyang Sword Chi. Mo Huisho was secretly bewildered, but Leng Shiqi pointed with his left hand. With a boom, a blood-red lightning shot out. That blood-colored thunderbolt was actually a perfect fusion of the rich blood chi and the tyrannical power of lightning. It disappeared in the blink of an eye. Mo Huisho was shocked. She shook the bell on her wrist. Instantly, dozens of goo worms of different colors came out of her body and rushed towards the blood-colored lightning. Among these goo worms were the spirit-devouring goo that Leng Shiqi had seen before. In an instant, the blood-red lightning shattered most of the goo worms, but it was blocked by the goo worms in the end. The remaining goo worms continued to fly towards Leng Shiqi. He used his palm as a blade and slashed down. A blazing flame blade slashed out and swallowed the goo worms. At this moment, Leng Shiqi changed his voice and said, Mo Huisho, I have no ill intentions. I'm just here to make a deal with you. Mo Huisho's movements paused. She and Leng Shiqi had only exchanged 2 or 3 moves, and she felt that Leng Shiqi was very difficult to deal with. Furthermore, she saw that Leng Shiqi didn't even use his full strength, but he was still able to fight her to a standstill. This already gave him the right to talk to her as an equal. However, Mo Huisho couldn't help but feel embarrassed and angry. Tonight, she had met Qin Jinshan, Lu Xingji, and this mysterious person in front of her. They were all existences that could fight against Spirit Aperture Realm cultivators while being in the Spirit Pulse Realm. She couldn't help but sigh. The Thunderblaze dynasty was indeed full of talents. On the other hand, her Zhu Lu country was always lacking in talents. She didn't connect Lu Xingji with Leng Shiqi because in the Dark Thunder manner, Leng Shiqi used the Glorious Sun Mysterious Yang Palm, which was a metal elemental technique. However, Leng Shiqi was currently using a fire elemental technique. The two were completely different, so Mo Huisho didn't think that these two people could be the same person. Mo Huisho's thoughts turned rapidly. She didn't have the confidence to kill Leng Shiqi. If she really fought to the death, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. This place was only a few miles away from Misty Chi City, and she was definitely on the Dark Thunder Guard's blacklist. Once someone found her here, she would probably never be able to return. Mo Huisho lowered her voice and said, "Tell me." The corner of Leng Shiqi's mouth lifted slightly under his mask. He had already guessed that Mo Huisho would be like this. He said, "Mo Huisho, now that your identity has been exposed, you should know that the Dark Thunder Guards have a sound transmission array. If there are no accidents, your information should have already spread throughout the entire West Desolate Province. Take advantage of the fact that the Dark Thunder Guards and the various city guards haven't been mobilized yet. This is your last chance to escape from the West Desolate Province. Therefore, with every moment you stay here, your chances of survival will decrease. Mo Huishou knew that Leng Shiqi was not lying, but it still made her feel uncertain. She thought to herself, my identity was only exposed not long ago, how did he know? Could it be that he's a member of the Dark Thunder Guards? Or was he hiding near the Dark Thunder residence just now? However, she didn't have much time to think carefully, so she said even more anxiously, then why are you still talking nonsense? Leng Shiqi laughed secretly. Mo Huishou's state of mind was no longer calm. As long as her state of mind was unstable, she would reveal her flaws. In fact, what he said just now was all a lie. It was true that the Dark Thunder Guards had a sound transmission array, but he didn't expose this matter. He wanted to trick Mo Huishou and gain more benefits. Leng Shiqi put on an unfathomable expression and said, I can pretend that I didn't see you, and even help you cover up the news and let you leave the West Desolate Province smoothly. Don't doubt my words. My identity is far from what you can imagine. If I say I can do it, then I can do it. Mo Huishou naturally didn't believe everything in her heart, but Leng Shiqi's words did move her a little. She gritted her teeth and said, then what do you want? Cultivation techniques. Leng Shiqi said these two words. I'm very interested in your Gu techniques. As long as you give me a few rank 4 cultivation techniques related to Gu techniques, I can guarantee that you can leave the West Desolate Province. Leng Shiqi's words weren't a lie. He was really interested in Gu techniques. Moreover, he had already opened up all the spirit veins that could be opened up, and he urgently needed cultivation techniques to open up the remaining spirit veins. Therefore, he set his sights on Mo Huishou. Mo Huishou chuckled when she heard this. So you've taken a fancy to my cultivation techniques. Not to mention that cultivation techniques are secrets that can't be passed on, I might as well tell you the truth. My cultivation techniques require the use of Gu worms. Unfortunately, only Zhu Lugua knows how to cultivate Gu worms, so even if I give you the cultivation techniques, you won't be able to cultivate them. Leng Shiqi shook his head. You don't have to worry about this. You can take your time to think about it. If you drag on for too long, even I won't be able to suppress your information. Chapter 347. You. Mo Huishou was furious, but she couldn't do anything. Leng Shiqi had her in a tight grip. She couldn't kill Leng Shiqi in a short period of time. She could ignore Leng Shiqi and escape, but Leng Shiqi wouldn't let her escape so easily. Moreover, just like what Leng Shiqi said, her information had already spread throughout the Western Desolate Province. The longer she delayed, the stricter the defense at the border would be. Even the city guards and dark lightning guards of each city would be looking for her. By then, she wouldn't be able to escape even if she had wings. However, the cultivation technique she cultivated was a secret technique of the Gu God sect. It couldn't be spread to outsiders. If this matter was spread, she would be taken away by the sect leader to refine Gu. Thousands of thoughts flashed through her mind. Finally, she decided to give it a try. Escape. Mo Huishou's body flashed with green light. Her figure turned into a green light and flew across the night sky. Leng Shiqi snorted coldly as a silver-white cloak suddenly appeared behind him. Using the ghostly spring steps, he transformed into a black and white stream of light and shot out. His speed was slightly faster than Mo Huishou's. The ghostly spring steps was a combination of 3 movement techniques. In terms of rank, it was at least comparable to a 5th level technique. Coupled with the Holy Silver Deer's Beast Origin Battle Rune, his speed was slightly faster than Mo Huishou, who was at the Spirit Aperture realm. Mo Huishou naturally saw Leng Shiqi chasing after her. She sighed in her heart and stopped. She knew that if Leng Shiqi attacked, he would definitely be able to hold her here. Her plan to escape would be completely ruined. At the same time, she was secretly surprised. The person in front of her was only at the Spirit Pulse realm, but his battle strength was comparable to the Spirit Aperture realm. Even his speed was so terrifying. This person's identity must not be simple. She began to doubt Ling Shiqi's words. Mo Huisho, you still haven't given up? My patience is limited, and so is your time. I don't have time to waste with you. I will only give you 3 breaths of time to consider. After 3 breaths of time, if you do not agree to give me the cultivation method, I will turn around and leave. I will then wait for the news of your execution. Ling Shiqi's voice was as cold as a 1,000-year-old ice cave. Mo Huisho had never met such a difficult person. Although her cultivation was high, she was not confident that she could kill Ling Shiqi in a short period of time. Even if she ran away, her speed was not as fast as Ling Shiqi. She would still be trapped here. Her only choice now was to make a deal. Mo Huisho couldn't help but feel a little anxious. However, she recalled what Ling Shiqi had said before. She rolled her eyes and said, I promise you. However, she suddenly changed the topic. However, how can I trust you? Ling Shiqi said coldly, you are still wasting time. If you don't trust me, we can go our separate ways. Mo Huisho was obviously not satisfied with such an answer. Her eyes hidden under the mask kept flickering, as if she was hesitating whether to trust Ling Shiqi or not. Finally, she made up her mind and said, good, you are very good. I will give you the cultivation method. Then, Mo Huisho took out a few handkerchiefs. She quickly wrote dense and delicate words on them and threw them to Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi took the handkerchiefs and a system prompt appeared in front of his eyes. Discovered Level 4 Cultivation Method 10,000 Goose Spirit Devouring Technique, incomplete. Do you want to learn it? No. Seeing this prompt, Ling Shiqi knew that the cultivation method was not fake. However, this cultivation method was incomplete, which made him unhappy. He said in a low voice, this cultivation method is not complete. Mo Huisho laughed. You said it yourself that you only want a level 4 cultivation method. My cultivation method is far beyond level 4. Even if I only gave you the first 2 levels, it is comparable to a level 4 cultivation method. Now that I have given you the cultivation method, you won't go back on your words, right? Mo Huisho thought to herself. Although this 10,000 goose spirit devouring technique was forbidden to be spread, she only gave out the first 2 levels. Moreover, this cultivation method could only be practiced with goo worms. Even if she gave it to him, he would not be able to practice it. Ling Shiqi laughed secretly. Mo Huisho actually caught the small loophole in his words. He also retorted, that is true, but I am talking about a few level 4 cultivation methods. If you only gave me the incomplete cultivation method, this one is not enough. Don't be greedy. Mo Huisho was also angered by his words. Ling Shiqi said sarcastically, you even gave me this kind of legacy cultivation method. What are some ordinary level 4 cultivation methods worth? I am purely curious about the cultivation method system of the 6 nations of the West and want to learn by analogy. As long as you give me 2 more level 4 cultivation methods, I will immediately arrange them for you. Mo Huisho immediately said in a low voice, you think level 4 cultivation methods are vegetables by the roadside. Ling Shiqi shrugged. If you really can't, level 4 spiritual techniques are barely enough. Mo Huisho heard this and thought of something. She took out the square handkerchief and started writing again. This action was a tacit approval of her choice. However, Ling Shiqi was very curious. How many handkerchiefs did this Mo Huisho bring with her? Take them. Mo Huisho threw a few handkerchiefs in annoyance. Discovered level 4 spiritual technique Imperial Goo Demonic Sound. Do you want to learn it? Discovered level 4 spiritual technique Goo Spirit Spider Web. Do you want to learn it? Ling Shiqi fell into silence after receiving these two spiritual techniques. Humph, Mo Huisho sneered inwardly. These two spiritual techniques were genuine level 4 spiritual techniques, but ordinary spirit cultivators couldn't cultivate them at all. Imperial Goo Demonic Sound was a spiritual technique that could control a large number of goo worms. However, this Thunderfire dynasty didn't even have any goo worms, so how could she control them? As for Goo Spirit Spider Web, it was the spiritual technique she used to stop Ling Shiqi from chasing after her in Dark Thunder manner. Although this spiritual technique didn't rely on goo worms, it required one to cultivate 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique to use it. In her opinion, it was impossible for Ling Shiqi to cultivate the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, so this Goo Spirit Spider Web was also a useless spiritual technique. Thinking of this, Mo Huisho proudly raised her head. Actually, the reason why Ling Shiqi was silent was because he really wanted these two spiritual techniques. Although the Imperial Goo Demonic Sound couldn't be used now, he would be going to Zhu Lu country soon. At that time, he could think of ways to get some goo worms and use them. On the other hand, the Spirit Venom Spiderweb was a spiritual technique with a strong binding ability that Ling Shiqi currently lacked. He had personally experienced how difficult it was to deal with this spiritual technique. It could be said that he was very satisfied with these two spiritual techniques. However, he still pretended to be sullen and said angrily, "You really know how to take advantage of loopholes. Fine, I'll accept this small loss. You can leave now. I can help you fight for half a day at most. As for the rest of the day, you can count on yourself." After speaking, a black aura rose around him and his figure disappeared under the cover of the black aura. Chapter 348. When Mo Huisho saw Ling Shiqi leave so straightforwardly, she was also slightly surprised. It seems that this person is somewhat trustworthy, but I don't know if he has the ability to buy time for me. If it's true, half a day is enough. Then, Mo Huisho thought of Ling Shiqi's deflated look before he left. She was secretly happy and left at her fastest speed. As for Ling Shiqi, he quietly returned to his room and called Xiao Qing over. Xiao Qing was still sending people to clean up the devastated courtyard. Now that he was suddenly called over by Ling Shiqi, his head was full of question marks. "Sir, what orders do you have?" Ling Shiqi lightly said, "Don't spread the news that Mo Huisho is from Zhu Road country. Wait until tomorrow morning to inform the headquarters of Shihuang province." Yes. Xiao Qing knew that this was somewhat against the rules. Since Mo Huisho's identity was exposed, they should quickly spread the news throughout Shihuang province and capture her before she returned to Zhu Road country. But since Ling Shiqi said so, he must have his reasons. Xiao Qing could only obey. Go. Ling Shiqi waved his hand. Xiao Qing bowed and retreated. Ling Shiqi's lips curled up slightly. Tonight, he had earned a rank 4 cultivation technique and 2 rank 4 spiritual skills for free. It could be said that his harvest was not small. As for why he let Mo Huisho go, it was naturally because there was a use for her. After some time, he would be going to Zhu Road country. This was a rare opportunity, so he planned to use this opportunity to get more goo worms. Although goo techniques were a small path, they were unpredictable and hard to guard against. If used well, they could be a trump card. For example, the mind-controlling goo could secretly control a person's thoughts. Another example was the spirit-devouring goo, which could devour spirit energy and was the nemesis of various spiritual skills. Thus, goo techniques could not be underestimated. However, Ling Shiqi was going to Zhu Road country as a Dark Thunder Guard, so he probably did not have many opportunities to come into contact with goo worms. And the reason he let Mo Huisho go back was to use her as a channel to collect goo worms. Ling Shiqi had already memorized Mo Huisho's spiritual aura. As long as Mo Huisho appeared near him, he would immediately recognize him. That Mo Huisho's cultivation was at the spirit aperture realm. Ling Shiqi believed that there were not many women who had reached the spirit aperture realm in Zhu Lu country. He only needed to ask around to find out Mo Huisho's true identity. At that time, he only needed to use the excuse of Mo Huisho secretly imparting a cultivation technique to restrain Mo Huisho and make her get some goo worms. Then, everything would become simple. Therefore, he chose to release Mo Huisho. He was treating Mo Huisho like a leak. It was laughable that Mo Huisho had thought that he could use a few techniques and spiritual techniques that others could not cultivate to fool Leng Shiqi. Little did she know that Leng Shiqi had started to plot against her the moment she took out the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique. Then, Leng Shiqi took out the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique, imperial goo demonic sound, and goo spirit spider web to cultivate. What surprised him was that the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique could be considered a very obscure cultivation technique. Out of the 9 spirit veins that it needed to open, only one was already opened by Leng Shiqi. In other words, Leng Shiqi could now open another 8 spirit veins. This made him feel that tonight's plan was too profitable. On the second day, the news that the Dark Thunder Manor's supervisory seal was not lost spread throughout Lanqi City. This made those who came to watch the show a little disappointed. Of course, what they wanted to see the most was Dark Thunder Manor being defeated. However, this also showed how unfathomable Dark Thunder Manor was. Even a great bandit like Mo Huisho was defeated by Dark Thunder Manor. It could be seen that Dark Thunder Manor was a scourge. In addition, there would be no harm if there was no comparison. Everyone's topic of discussion shifted to the comparison between the City Lord's Manor and Dark Thunder Manor. Look at the City Lord's Manor. There were hundreds of city guards and a city lord who was in the late stage of the Spirit Aperture realm, but it was still stolen. On the other hand, Dark Thunder Manor only had a few dozen Dark Thunder guards, and none of them were in the Spirit Aperture realm. Even so, Mo Huisho was not able to succeed. Under such a comparison, Dark Thunder Manor's reputation seemed to have overshadowed the City Lord's Manor. Sun Gang's expression was unsightly, but he didn't care too much about this. He was more concerned about Mo Huisho's identity. Early in the morning, he received information from Leng Shiqi that Mo Huisho was a spy from Zhu Lu country. A spy from Zhu Lu country actually entered his City Lord's Manor as if there was no one there. This was simply a disgrace. It was his dereliction of duty. Catching spies was the Dark Thunder Guard's job, but this spy committed crimes in Lanqi City, which was under Sun Gang's jurisdiction. This was his responsibility. Although the higher-ups didn't blame him, Sun Gang's heart still felt stifled. At the same time, he really wanted to know how Leng Shiqi found out about Mo Huisho's identity. As for the Leng Shiqi that these people were talking about, he didn't care about the outside world and only cared about his own cultivation. On the path of cultivation, he couldn't relax at all. Because he had already opened up 42 spirit veins previously, he had a lot of experience. Thus, this time, he only used 5 days to open up the additional 8 spirit veins of the 10,000 goo spirit devouring technique. At this point, he already had 50 spirit veins on him. Just in this aspect, no one could compare to him. But his goal was to open up all 72 spirit veins in his body. Unfortunately, he didn't have any extra rank 4 cultivation techniques on hand, so he had to think of a way to get some rank 4 cultivation techniques. Actually, he also had an expectation in his heart, and that was, why hadn't his reward arrived yet? He had uprooted the Xianyang sect along with a few other clans. The reward for such a great contribution should be very generous, and there might even be a cultivation technique inside. But counting the time, more than a month had passed, and there was still no news from the higher-ups. Not only was there no news about the reward, but there was also no news about the matter of going to Zhu Road Country. Since they were going to Zhu Road Country to ask for an explanation, shouldn't they take advantage of the fact that the matter had just happened to save them? Of course, these were all problems that the higher-ups were considering. He couldn't care less even if he wanted to. Since the reward didn't arrive, he could only turn his attention to other people. What he needed the most now was a rank 4 cultivation technique, but rank 4 cultivation techniques were exceptionally precious. Also, there were requirements for the rank 4 cultivation technique that he wanted. That was, the spirit veins that needed to be opened up in the cultivation technique couldn't be the same as the ones that he had already opened. Leng Shiqi had already opened up 50 spirit veins. If he didn't want it to be the same, the requirements for the cultivation technique were extremely strict. Especially since there were still many spirit veins in his legs that hadn't been opened up, so what he needed the most was a cultivation technique that was good at speed. Leng Shiqi's eyes flickered, and he suddenly thought of someone. After a while, he called a dark lightning guard and ordered, "Go and call the Zhong clan's clan head Zhongqing over." He prepared to harvest leeks again. Chapter 349. Zhongqing was brought to Dark Thunder Manor. Along the way, his heart was jumping up and down. He couldn't guess why Leng Shiqi called him here, and he didn't know if it was a blessing or a curse. He also knew about Imo Huesho's failure in Dark Thunder Manor. Even a Spirit Aperture Realm bandit was defeated by Leng Shiqi. It could be seen that his methods were getting more and more powerful. Zhongqing walked into the meeting hall and saw Leng Shiqi sitting on the main seat. He quickly bowed and said, "Greetings to Lord Supervisor." It could be said that he lowered his status to the lowest. "Sit," Leng Shiqi said indifferently. The reason he called Zhongqing here was naturally because he was interested in the Zhong family's cultivation technique. The patriarchs of the 6 great families in Mist Qi City were all at the Spirit Pulse realm. Without a cultivation technique of rank 4 or above, it was impossible for them to cultivate to this realm. Therefore, Leng Shiqi planned to obtain the cultivation techniques of the 6 great families. The cultivation techniques of the 6 great families might not be that profound, but Leng Shiqi didn't care about how powerful the cultivation technique was, but how many spirit pulses it could open. And the Zhong family's cultivation technique was one that specialized in speed. This wasn't a secret, and the Dark Thunder Guard's information was very clear. Zhongqing sat down anxiously. When he first saw Leng Shiqi, he was keenly aware that something bad was going to happen today. Therefore, he felt like he was sitting on pins and needles. However, he still smiled and said, "Lord Lu, if there's anything, just tell me." Leng Shiqi smiled. "Today, I called Patriarch Zhong here to discuss the Tao of spirit cultivation." Discuss the Tao of spirit cultivation? Zhongqing was confused. What was this about? Seeing Zhongqing's confused expression, Leng Shiqi knocked on the chair and said, "I heard that Patriarch Zhong's light feather gale record is quite mysterious. Those who successfully cultivate it will be as fast as the wind and as light as a feather. I wonder if that's true." When he heard Leng Shiqi mention his family's cultivation method, Zhongqing's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling about this. He secretly swallowed his saliva and laughed dryly. Really? If that's the case, then it's easy." Leng Shiqi suddenly clapped his hands. At this time, Qin Jianchen expressionlessly walked in with his sword. Qin Jianchen's injuries were mostly healed after a few days of recuperation. He glared at Zhongqing the moment he walked in. Qin Jianchen was the Blood Cloak assassin of the Blood Cloak Pavilion. Many people had died in his hands. Being stared at like this, Zhongqing suddenly felt a chill coming from his tailbone and going up his spine, making him shudder. He could even sense that this person could kill him with a single strike of the sword. Zhongqing trembled and said, My lord, what do you mean? I have never done anything to let you down." Leng Shiqi said indifferently, "Oh, it's nothing. It's just that this envoy wants to see the Zhong family's light feather storm record." Coincidentally, this envoy's subordinate, Dark Lightning Envoy Qin Jianchen, is also proficient in speed. You can compare notes with him. Hearing Leng Shiqi's words, with Zhongqing's shrewdness, he immediately knew what Leng Shiqi wanted. He actually wanted the light feather storm record. Zhongqing's heart was filled with bewilderment. This cultivation method was the foundation of their Zhong family. He absolutely could not casually leak it out. However, he couldn't help but have some doubts. In his opinion, Leng Shiqi's cultivation was improving at a rapid pace. Furthermore, his battle strength was also very strong. He was able to kill someone at the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm when he was at the middle stage of the Spirit Pulse realm. At the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm, he was actually able to stall the Spirit Aperture realm Li Feizhou. Such a person definitely had a very high-level cultivation method. How could he possibly be interested in the Light Feather Storm record of his family? Zhong Qing was bewildered, but he quickly understood that Ling Shiqi didn't call him over to discuss this matter with him. If he didn't agree, he probably wouldn't be able to walk out of this door. Zhong Qing made his decision in a breath's time. He stood up and said, "Why is Lord Lu so troublesome? Why don't I offer the Light Feather Storm record? Lord Lu can slowly comprehend it. This isn't too good." Ling Shiqi's face showed some hesitation when he heard this. In reality, his evaluation of Zhong Qing rose a bit. Although this person was greedy for life and afraid of death, he had a vision and decisiveness that ordinary people couldn't hope to reach. Zhong Qing smiled and said, "Lord Lu is too polite. If it weren't for Lord Lu, how could the Zhong family have its current glory? Not to mention the Light Feather Storm record, even if it was the entire Zhong family, it would be worth it. Since the Zhong family head is so enthusiastic, I can't refuse. I'll accept this Light Feather Storm record." Ling Shiqi revealed a smile on his face. "How about this? I'll make the decision. The Zhong family can send a Spirit Transformation Realm cultivator to join the Dark Thunder Guard. However, this person must have some ability. My Dark Thunder Guard doesn't accept trash." Hiss. Zhong Qing was secretly shocked when he heard this. Join the Dark Thunder Guard? His Zhong family could join the Dark Thunder Guard? What did this mean? This meant that his Zhong family and the Dark Thunder Guard were one family. He could be considered to have completely boarded the Dark Thunder Guard's ship. Zhong Qing felt that exchanging a cultivation method for the long-term development of the Zhong family was definitely worth it. He quickly bowed and said, "Many thanks for Lord Lu's kindness. Please rest assured that this little one will carefully select the family's disciples." Ling Shiqi waved his hand and Qin Jianchen understood and retreated. Zhong Qing took a pen and paper and wrote down the cultivation method of the Light Feather Storm record. Rank 4 cultivation method Light Feather Storm record discovered. Do you want to learn it? Seeing this prompt, Ling Shiqi gently smiled and said, "The Zhong family head is still sensible. By the way, I still have a few guests coming later. They are all people that the Zhong family head knows. You can meet them here." Zhong Cheng's eyelids twitched when he heard this. He immediately guessed who the other guests Ling Shiqi was talking about were. It must be the family heads of the other 5 families. It turned out that not only did Ling Shiqi want his Zhong family's cultivation method, but he also wanted the cultivation methods of the other 5 families. After this, the other 5 family heads came one after another. Under Ling Shiqi's coercion and Zhong Cheng's example, they had no choice but to hand over their family's cultivation methods. In the same way, Ling Shiqi also promised that they could send a disciple to join the Dark Thunder Guard, which was not a bad treatment. Overall, things went very smoothly. After he sent everyone away, Ling Shiqi immediately returned to his room to prepare to cultivate and open up his spiritual veins. To his surprise, the Zhong family's Light Feather Storm record could open up an additional 6 spiritual veins. It was a pity that the other 5 cultivation methods were rather ordinary. These 5 cultivation methods only added up to 10 more spiritual veins. However, Ling Shiqi was very satisfied. As long as he opened up all the spiritual veins of the 6 cultivation methods, he would have 66 spiritual veins. Chapter 350. Not long after, Ling Shiqi had just opened the 6th spirit vein of the Light Feather Gale record when he received a message from the Western Desolate Province headquarters asking him to make a trip there as soon as possible. The message mentioned that he was going to the Western Desolate Province for 2 things. One was that he had received his reward, and the other was that he was preparing to leave for Zhu Road country. Ling Shiqi didn't expect these 2 things to happen at the same time, but it was good, it saved him the trouble of making 2 trips. Then, he called the 5 Dark Lightning envoys to the conference hall. I'm going to the Western Desolate Province immediately, and then I'll follow Inspector Yu to Zhu Road Country. I'm not sure when I'll return, so you guys will be in charge of Dark Lightning Manor for the time being. Ling Shiqi called them over to arrange everything. He said, Qiu Cheng, you'll still be in charge of intelligence, and Xiao Qian will continue to manage the Dark Lightning Guards. Qian Ming, you'll be in charge of handing over missions. As for Qin Jianshan, you just need to keep all the troublemakers under control. Qiu Cheng and Xiao Qian were still in their original positions, and Qian Ming was in charge of managing missions when he was disguised as Pang Yuan, so it was natural for him to do it. Qin Jianshan wasn't good at communicating with people, so he wasn't suited to manage Dark Lightning Manor. Of course, Ling Shiqi didn't transfer him from the Blood Garment Pavilion to manage things. Instead, he was interested in his battle strength. After Ling Shiqi left Mist City, it was unknown how long it would take for him to return, so it was inevitable that some troublemakers would come out to cause trouble. With Qin Jianshan here, he could leave without worry. Everyone nodded in agreement, but Qin Jianshan didn't say anything, but everyone was already used to it. At this time, Guan Feihong spoke, Sir, what about me? Among them, Ling Shiqi didn't mention Guan Feihong. He didn't want to fight for power, but he couldn't just sit around and bask in the sun every day. Ling Shiqi turned to look at him and said, You'll come with me to Zhu Road Country. Yu Ruifeng had sent a message saying that he could bring a subordinate with him. The reason why he chose Guan Feihong was because Guan Feihong was at the late stage of the Spirit Pulse realm and could be considered a decent fighter. Secondly, Ling Shiqi always felt that Guan Feihong seemed to know a lot about the Gu God sect. Taking him to Zhu Lu Country might be able to collect the Gu worms more smoothly. Guan Feihong's eyes flashed as he lowered his head and said, Yes. As for Qiu Cheng, Xiao Qian and the others, they all looked at him enviously. Being brought to Zhu Road by Ling Shiqi was not only a golden opportunity, but the trust they had in him was enough to make them envious. After arranging these matters, Ling Shiqi didn't delay any further. After simply packing up, he brought Guan Feihong to Western Desolation City. This time, because he was bringing people with him, he didn't use the fate skill to hasten his journey. He could only ride a spirit horse for 4 days before finally arriving at the Western Desolated City. But to Ling Shiqi's surprise, he bumped into Yu Ruifeng the moment he stepped into Dark Thunder Manor's headquarters. Yu Ruifeng seemed to have been waiting for Ling Shiqi. When he saw him arrive, he approached him with an anxious expression and said, Follow me first. Ling Shiqi indicated for Guan Feihong to wait here for a moment. He followed Yu Ruifeng to a side room with doubts in his heart. Yu Ruifeng said with a serious expression, Your reward has arrived, but you must be careful of the person who delivered it. Who is it? Ling Shiqi was surprised to see Yu Ruifeng so serious. This was the first time he saw Yu Ruifeng like this. Moreover, did they need someone to deliver the reward? Couldn't they just send someone else? From Yu Ruifeng's words, this person wasn't simple at all. Even a high-ranking inspector like him seemed to be wary of this person. Yu Ruifeng said, The person who came is Eunuch Gao, one of the Dark Thunder Manor's supervisors. He is also His Majesty's trusted aide. His short sentence immediately caused Ling Shiqi's pupils to shrink. Although he did not know much about Dynasty's internal affairs, especially what happened in the Supreme Palace, he had at least some common sense. This Eunuch Gao was one of His Majesty's most trusted people. He was also one of the 4 supervisors of the Dark Thunder Manor and was in charge of supervising the 8 western counties of the Thunderblaze dynasty. It could be said that this person was his direct superior. This was an important person who could reach the heavens. However, Eunuch Gao had always been by His Majesty's side. Why would he appear in the Western Desolate Province? Yu Ruifeng continued, Eunuch Gao came here secretly. This matter cannot be revealed to anyone else. Otherwise, you and I won't be able to keep our heads. When you see Eunuch Gao later, put away all your thoughts. Whatever he says, you just have to agree. Do you understand? Ling Shiqi felt that Yu Ruifeng's words didn't just contain fear towards Eunuch Gao, but also a bit of fear. However, he thought about it again. As the saying goes, accompanying a ruler is like accompanying a tiger. Since eunuch Gao was able to accompany His Majesty, he must be someone with profound means. Eunuch Gao has waited long enough. Quickly go to the main hall to see him. Oh right, don't mention anything about us. However, if eunuch Gao asks, you must report truthfully. This subordinate understands. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and left the side room. He turned towards the main hall. When he took a step into the main hall, he immediately felt that the room was filled with cold air. This kind of cold air wasn't ice cold, but cold. In his eyes, a beardless old man was sitting on a chair. He looked very old. The wrinkles on his face were like ravines, but his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. This was eunuch Gao. Leng Shiqi knew that eunuch Gao's cultivation was at the unity of heaven and man realm, the same as Yu Ruifeng. However, he had a faint feeling that if eunuch Gao and Yu Ruifeng were to fight, Yu Ruifeng would probably be killed within a few moves. He had only felt this kind of invisible aura from eunuch Gao from his master Wu Xiang. After Leng Shiqi entered, he only glanced at eunuch Gao before lowering his head. He respectfully said, "This subordinate, Lu Xingji, greets Steward Gao." "Sit." Eunuch Gao's voice sounded hoarse and sharp. It was very uncomfortable to listen to. Leng Shiqi originally wanted to be polite, but when he thought of Yu Ruifeng's instructions, he bowed again and sat down. Eunuch Gao's eyes swept over Leng Shiqi. His eyes became unusually bright. Heroes indeed come from the young. Leng Shiqi felt that eunuch Gao's gaze was about to see through him. When he heard eunuch Gao's words, he didn't know if eunuch Gao was talking about the destruction of Profound Yang's sect or if eunuch Gao had seen through him. He humbly said, "Steward Gao is overpraising this subordinate." Eunuch Gao expressionlessly said, "You used your spiritual pulse cultivation to destroy Profound Yang's sect and Zhu Lu country's conspiracy. You are worthy of such praise. I've also brought you the reward you deserve on this trip. There are 2 rewards in total. First, I have fought for a spot for you. A spot to represent the entire Western Desolate Province in this event." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi was confused. Wasn't this just painting a pie in the sky? From eunuch Gao's words, it seemed like a very rare spot. However, compared to a castle in the sky, eunuch Gao preferred a real reward. However, he didn't show any expression on his face. "Second, I can agree to one of your requests." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi's heart suddenly moved. Chapter 351. What did Leng Shiqi want the most? Of course, what he wanted the most was a cultivation method. Right now, he only lacked 6 spirit meridians to open up all the spirit meridians in his body. However, these 6 spirit meridians were very impractical, and almost no cultivation method would open them up. Therefore, he needed a very obscure cultivation method. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi cautiously said, "Steward Gao, this humble servant wants a cultivation method of level 4 or above. It would be best if it was a very strange cultivation method." Hearing Leng Shiqi's request, eunuch Gao revealed a look of interest. He stared at Leng Shiqi for a few breaths of time, then suddenly laughed. However, his laughter was abnormally unpleasant to the ears, and even a bit piercing, making people feel uncomfortable. "This request is rare, but you've asked the right person. I do have a strange cultivation method here, but I don't know if you dare to cultivate it." Eunuch Gao threw out a jade slip half the size of a palm. Leng Shiqi was a bit confused when he caught it. "Send your mental power into it." Leng Shiqi's mind moved, and his mental power surged into the jade slip. Then, he suddenly saw sinister words in his mind. Cold Nether Treasure Manual. This jade slip recorded a cultivation method, and it was a level 5 cultivation method. If a level 4 cultivation method was enough to support a large family, then a level 5 cultivation method was enough to support a spirit cultivation sect. Eunuch Gao was actually giving him a level 5 cultivation method? Leng Shiqi couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. This cultivation method was personally created by me, and there has never been a successor. You are the first. Eunuch Gao's voice sounded, and Leng Shiqi withdrew his mental power. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi instantly thought of a famous cultivation method created by a eunuch in his previous life. Combined with what Eunuch Gao just said, he might not dare to cultivate it. Leng Shiqi suddenly felt a cold breeze under his chair. This cultivation method, could it be that only eunuchs could practice it? Eunuch Gao continued, the cold nether scripture is a cultivation method that my family created for my children. Although you can cultivate it without cleansing your body, if you forcefully cultivate it, it will cause an imbalance in your yin and yang. Do you want this reward or not? Eunuch Gao had already explained a lot for Leng Shiqi. Even if Leng Shiqi didn't want to, he didn't dare to say it out loud. He stood up and cupped his fists. Thank you for your reward, Steward Gao. Eunuch Gao raised a sinister smile. Good, when we reach Zhu country, don't lose face from my imperial court. Leng Shiqi knew that Eunuch Gao was asking him to leave. He nodded and took 2 steps back before turning to leave. Eunuch Gao looked at Leng Shiqi's departing figure with a meaningful look in his eyes. When Leng Shiqi came out of the main hall, he saw Yu Ruifeng give him a look in the distance. He immediately walked over. What did Eunuch Gao ask you? Yu Ruifeng seemed to ask anxiously. But Leng Shiqi frowned inwardly. He answered, Eunuch Gao didn't ask anything. Really? How would this subordinate dare to deceive Lord Yu? Haha. Yu Ruifeng raised his head and smiled. How can I not believe virtuous nephew's words? Right, virtuous nephew, can you tell me what reward Eunuch Gao gave you? Don't misunderstand, I'm just curious. Leng Shiqi sneered inwardly. This Yu Ruifeng probably wanted a share of the pie. But he had nothing to hide and wanted Yu Ruifeng to explain. So he said, Eunuch Gao gave me a cultivation method and a spot, nothing else. At this point, Leng Shiqi deliberately lowered his voice. Martial uncle, isn't this Eunuch Gao too stingy? He sent me away with a cultivation method. But when Yu Ruifeng heard the word spot, his eyes widened. He was a dignified inspector of the Western Wilderness Dark Thunder Guard, a person with real power. Yet he revealed such a shocked expression. Yu Ruifeng murmured, Spot? Is it really that spot? Virtuous nephew, what was Eunuch Gao's exact words? When Leng Shiqi saw Yu Ruifeng making a fuss over nothing, he knew that the quota was extremely precious, so he repeated Eunuch Gao's words to him. Yu Ruifeng nodded. It can't be wrong, it can't be wrong. Virtuous nephew, you're really lucky. Eunuch Gao wants to nurture you greatly. But Leng Shiqi was still confused. Martial uncle, what exactly is that spot? This matter hasn't been completely decided yet, so I can't reveal it to you. But you have to know that your spot is the only one in the entire Western Wilderness Dark Thunder Guard. You can imagine how precious this spot is. In my original plan, after returning from Zhu, I was going to select some people to compete for this spot. But now that Eunuch Gao has spoken, it's yours. It saves me a lot of effort. Leng Shiqi understood half of it. This spot was obviously very rare. Now that he was directly appointed, it was a great reward. But unfortunately, he still didn't know what this spot was for. Since Yu Ruifeng didn't say, he couldn't ask. He could only wait patiently. And after Yu Ruifeng confirmed this matter, his words and actions towards Leng Shiqi became more enthusiastic. He pulled him to chat, as if they were really uncle and nephew. After a long time, Yu Ruifeng said, Virtuous nephew, it's getting late. You should go rest first. Tomorrow we'll prepare to leave for Zhu. Okay, martial nephew will take his leave. Come, take virtuous nephew Lu to the east courtyard. Yu Ruifeng immediately called out. The 2 servants immediately led Leng Shiqi away. At the same time, they were secretly surprised. The east courtyard was a place where only distinguished guests could live. Generally speaking, Yu Ruifeng would only arrange for distinguished guests of similar status to him to live in the east courtyard. After settling down in the east courtyard, Ling Shiqi locked himself in his room and took out the jade slip that eunuch Gao had given him. Ling Shiqi did some calculations. In these few short days, he had actually collected as many as 8 4th-tier and above cultivation techniques. And it even included a rank 5 cultivation method. In the past, Ling Shiqi definitely wouldn't have dared to think about this. This was the benefit of status and strength. It was no wonder that many people were obsessed with these things their whole life. However, Ling Shiqi didn't care very much. Next, he began to concentrate on cultivating the Cold Nether Scripture and the 2 accompanying spiritual skills, Cold Nether Palm and Cold Nether Hand. These 2 spiritual skills were both rank 5 spiritual skills. What surprised him even more was that this Cold Nether Scripture was indeed very different from ordinary cultivation methods. It just happened to be able to open up his remaining 6 spirit veins. This also meant that as long as he cultivated for a certain amount of time, he could open up all 72 spirit veins in his body. Chapter 352. After a night of hard work, Ling Shiqi finally opened up another spirit vein. The next morning, their delegation of more than 20 people set off for Zhulu country. Although they were called a delegation, they had neither the honor nor the equipment of a delegation. These people included Inspector Yu Ruifeng, Supervisor Yuan Song who was in charge of the South County, and Ling Shiqi, as well as the accompanying guards. Even the weakest of the guards were at the spiritual pulse realm. There were several masters in the gang spirit realm. Ling Shiqi only brought Guan Feihong, Yuan Song brought 5 subordinates, and Yu Ruifeng brought more than a dozen people. And there was a very special person among these people, that was Jill. This witness had been kept by Ling Shiqi so that when they arrived at Zhulu country, he could testify in person. Because there weren't many of them, each of them rode on a spirit horse and rushed towards Zhulu country at top speed. There was only a grassland and a few military towns between the West Baron Prefecture and Zhulu country. There was no difficult road, so it only took them nearly 10 days to arrive at Zhulu country. As soon as they entered Zhulu country, Ling Shiqi not only saw many people dressed up in the west regions, but also saw various strange buildings that could not be seen in the imperial court. It was an eye-opener. There were no prefectures in Zhulu country because the entire Zhulu country was not as big as the West Baron Prefecture. So there were only dozens of cities in Zhulu country. Ling Shiqi and his group went straight into the imperial city of Zhulu country. At this moment, at the gate of the imperial city, the prince of Zhulu country, Prince Gus, received them. Prince Gus looked to be in his 40s or 50s. His body was a little weak, and he looked a bit like a scholar. Prince Gus said in an awkward accent, "Welcome, special envoys from your country. Please come with me to the post house to rest." On the way here, Yu Ruifeng had already given the information of the high level of Zhulu country to Ling Shiqi. Zhulu country was naturally led by its king, but internally, it was divided into 2 major factions, the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction. The peacemaking faction was basically made up of the old officials of Zhulu country. They were led by the current state elders and state preceptor. The state preceptor was the leader of the Gu God sect, which was the state religion of Zhulu country. The other pro-war faction was led by 2 princes, and Prince Gus was one of them. Zhulu country sending a prince to greet the envoy was giving Yu Ruifeng enough face, but Yu Ruifeng kept a straight face and didn't give Prince Gus any face. He knew why they were here. They were here to denounce him. Moreover, the smuggling of refined iron was obviously for the sake of war, and it was most likely instigated by the pro-war Prince Gus. The group followed Prince Gus to the post house next to the palace. After Yu Ruifeng sent Prince Gus away, he immediately called Yuan Song and Ling Shiqi over. Yu Ruifeng said, "Tomorrow, come with me to see Zhulu country's king, He Deng. Remember, no one in Zhulu is worthy of our respect, so even if you see the king, you have to straighten your backs. This is the power of our Thunderfire dynasty." Ling Shiqi and Yuan Song nodded. Yu Ruifeng looked at Ling Shiqi and said, "Tomorrow, go to the palace with that Jill. Also, bring all the evidence on you." With the witnesses and evidence, they can't deny it. However, the two of you shouldn't speak unless absolutely necessary. After all, this is a negotiation between two countries. Any slip of the tongue will be magnified. This subordinate understands. Lin Shiqi cupped his hands and said, "Well, since we're already here, there's no harm in telling you some things." Yu Ruifeng's face became serious. "Although we say we're here to denounce them, you should know the dynasty's intentions. They won't tear apart all pretense of cordiality with Zhu Lu country. Therefore, we can only try to get as many benefits as possible. The more benefits we get, the more credit we will get. Also, we have another mission." Ling Shiqi's face showed a confused expression, but he already guessed it. Of course, a big shot like Eunuch Gao wouldn't appear in the western wilderness just to give him a reward. At most, it was on the way. The time he came to the western wilderness coincided with the time he went to Zhu Lu country. Ling Shiqi wouldn't believe that there wasn't a connection between the two. At that time, he guessed that this trip to Zhu Lu country wasn't as simple as denouncing them. Yu Ruifeng raised his hand and took out a piece of jade stone. He injected spiritual energy into it, and the jade stone suddenly released a layer of jade brilliance that enveloped the three of them. This should be some kind of restriction that isolated sound and spiritual energy. Even so, Yu Ruifeng lowered his voice and said carefully, "Zhu Lu country and Profound Yang sect gathered a large amount of fine iron. It's very likely that it was ordered by the two pro-war princes. The higher-ups want us to secretly help the pro-peace faction suppress the pro-war faction." Ling Shiqi was secretly shocked. Was this to interfere with the internal affairs of another country? However, with just the few of them, could they do it? Yuan Sung also frowned and asked, "Sir, we only have a total of 20 people. How can we interfere with the conflict between the two factions? If we knew this would happen, we should have brought more people." Yu Ruifeng shook his head. "If we bring too many people, it will arouse suspicion. Moreover, our goal is to suppress the pro-war faction, but not the two princes. We only need to use some methods to get rid of a few pro-war ministers and weaken their forces. The rest will be done by the pro-peace faction for us. But we just got here and something happened to the pro-war ministers. Isn't this too obvious?" Yuan Song was still a little hesitant. However, Ling Shiqi found that Zhou Tsang was worrying too much. Perhaps this person had been the great supervisor for too long, so he had to be meticulous in everything he did and not leave any loopholes. He didn't know that even if the people of Zhu Lu country knew that they were the ones who did it, so what? As long as they did it cleanly and didn't leave any traces, whether it was the king or the two princes, they wouldn't be able to offend the Thunderfire dynasty. Moreover, the pro-peace faction might even raise their hands to support their actions. A trace of dissatisfaction flashed across Yu Ruifeng's eyes, but he still patiently explained it to Ling Shiqi, which was exactly what he had expected. Then, they discussed some details of the plan and went their separate ways. Ling Shiqi returned to his room with complicated feelings. Since they wanted to interfere with the conflict between the factions of Zhu Lu country, then his matter of collecting large numbers of goo worms wouldn't be so smooth. Thinking of goo worms, he thought of Mo Huisho. Then, he sat cross-legged on the bed, and his eyes suddenly turned green and white. With his current mental strength, White Eye's field of vision had already expanded to a range of 7 to 8 miles. He could already see half of the royal city. The reason why Ling Shiqi activated White Eye was firstly to check how many experts there were in the royal city. Secondly, he wanted to try his luck and see if he could find Mo Huisho. However, what surprised Ling Shiqi was that he really found Mo Huisho. However, Mo Huisho was actually in the royal palace. Chapter 353. Ling Shiqi didn't expect to find Mo Huisho so quickly, and she was actually in the palace. Is she a member of Zhu Lu country's royal family? He guessed. But this was also good. He originally planned to use Mo Huisho to help him collect goo worms, so the earlier he found her, the better. Unfortunately, now wasn't the time to go out, so Ling Shiqi could only stay in the room and cultivate. The night passed quickly, and it was very peaceful. The next morning, Ling Shiqi sent Guan Fei Hong to gather information, but he didn't want to gather information about the main combat faction, but he wanted information about the Gu God sect and Gu worms. This was his main purpose in coming to Zhu Lu country. As for holding accountable and interfering in Zhu Lu country's faction disputes, with Yu Ruifeng and Yuan Sung around, there was no place for him to speak. Ling Shiqi walked out of the door and was surprised to see a group of Zhu Lu country's people rushing in angrily, heading straight for Yu Ruifeng's room. He furrowed his brows and felt a little uneasy. Something important must have happened to make these people so angry. So, he followed them. Ling Shiqi had just gotten close to Yu Ruifeng's room when he heard angry shouts coming from inside, and a piece of news that shocked him. Zhu Lu country's king died mysteriously last night. In a moment, thousands of thoughts flashed through Ling Shiqi's mind. The king died? No matter how small Zhu Lu country was, it was still a country. How could the king suddenly die? And he died after they came here, so it looked like they were the ones who did it. And those people just now were some of Zhu Lu country's ministers. They thought it was Yu Ruifeng and the others who killed him. Ling Shiqi walked into the room and saw Yu Ruifeng's face as black as an iron pot, being pointed at and questioned by a few people. Now, they had come here specifically to question him. In the end, before they could even begin, they were questioned by someone else. Ling Shiqi looked at Yu Ruifeng and knew that he had a lot of anger in his heart. Yu Ruifeng was the inspector of the West Baron Prefecture, and the prefecture he oversaw was even bigger than the Zhu Road country. He came to Zhu Road country with a bit of arrogance. Now that he was being questioned by a group of officials from a small country, he would definitely be furious. But Yu Ruifeng didn't say anything. He just sat there with a sullen face. Ling Shiqi nodded. Yu Ruifeng was right. At this time, Yu Ruifeng absolutely couldn't say anything. They had all stayed in the post house last night. Many of them could testify to each other. It would only take a little investigation to find out. And once Yu Ruifeng got angry, he would be caught red-handed and wouldn't let go. At this moment, Yuan Sung also rushed over. He chuckled and tried to smooth things over. Everyone. Sirs, there's no need to be so emotional. We've only just found out about your country's king's passing, and our hearts are filled with grief. But this matter has nothing to do with us. We didn't even take a step out of the post house. You'll know once you check. The people of the Thunder Flame dynasty are the most despicable. You just arrived at the king's city and the king died mysteriously. Who else could it be other than you? Don't think that we don't know. You're all from the Dark Thunder Guards, and you're all spirit cultivators of the Sky Realm. It's not impossible to assassinate the king without anyone knowing. You dare to assassinate the king? Take them down. Yuan Sung and Yu Ruifeng quickly exchanged glances. At this time, not only them, but even Ling Shiqi could see that these people were here to cause trouble. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that the reason why the Thunderflame dynasty sent Ling Shiqi and the Dark Lightning Guards and delayed for more than a month before coming to the Zhu Road country was to make both sides turn the matter into a small one. As long as Zhu Road country took out some benefits, everyone would treat it as if the transportation of iron didn't happen. Therefore, Ling Shiqi and the others would definitely not assassinate the king. They had no motive at all. And these officials of Zhu Road country were all people who could sit in high positions. How could they be fools? How could they not see it? Therefore, these people wanted to use the king's death to put the hat of a major suspect on the Dark Thunder Guards. This way, the Dark Thunder Guards could only focus on proving their innocence. How could they have the chance to question the Zhu Road country about collecting iron? To Yu Ruifeng, the king's death was completely unexpected and completely disrupted the plan they made last night. But thinking about it, now that the king was dead, the throne was empty. There was no need to think about what would happen next. Zhu Road country would definitely fall into internal strife for the throne. As long as Zhu Road country fell into chaos, they would no longer have any thoughts of harming the Thunder Flame dynasty. This was a good thing. At this time, another person rushed in. It was Prince Gus. As soon as he walked in, he scolded the officials who were causing trouble, impudent. Lord Yu is the special envoy of the Thunder Flame dynasty. His status is noble and even this king is far inferior to him. You actually dare to question Lord Yu. You are really reckless. Prince Gus, their appearance and the king's death cannot be a coincidence. That's right. Even if they are the special envoys of the Thunder Flame dynasty, we must investigate this matter thoroughly. So what if they are from the Thunder Flame dynasty? They dare to assassinate the king. At most, we will fight them to the death. Enough. Prince Gus roared, a group of people who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Haven't you embarrassed yourselves enough? This king orders you to leave this place immediately. When they saw how angry Prince Gus was, they didn't dare to disobey the king's orders. They could only leave with righteous indignation while muttering. Prince Gus turned around and put on a warm smile. He said to Yu Ruifeng, Lord Yu, please forgive us. The cheating country's king suddenly passed away, and the officials were a little flustered. They should die 1,000 times for disturbing Lord Yu's rest. As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling face. Yu Ruifeng also squeezed out a smile and said, Prince Gus, what are you saying? I am also very surprised and sad about the death of your king. It is understandable that the officials are a little agitated. Prince Gus heaved a sigh of relief and said, oh, since that is the case, this king will thank Lord Yu on behalf of those officials for letting bygones be bygones. Now that the king has passed away, the Zhulu country is without a leader. Lord Yu's matter may be pushed back for a while. It is fine. I am afraid that your country has a lot of things to deal with now. We can just wait here. Yu Ruifeng's words were full of understanding. Lord Yu is really magnanimous. This king admires you. Speaking until here, he sighed again. Sigh. The palace is in a mess now. This king still has to go back and pacify the officials. I will not disturb Lord Yu's rest. Prince, please do as you wish. After Prince Gus left, Yu Ruifeng asked Leng Shiqi, who had been watching from the side, what do you think? Leng Shiqi said, one is playing the good cop, the other is playing the bad cop. Chapter 354. Yu Ruifeng looked at Leng Shiqi with appreciation. From the beginning, when Wu Xiang came to him through the back door, he actually didn't put Leng Shiqi in his eyes, so he deliberately arranged the position of supervisor for Leng Shiqi. In his mind, Leng Shiqi would definitely not be able to stay in this position. He arranged this in order to let Leng Shiqi know that it was not easy to enter the Dark Thunder Guard, so that he would take the initiative to back out. But later, Leng Shiqi quickly stabilized his position as supervisor, and eliminated the Xianyang faction with lightning speed, and directly obtained the only position from eunuch Gao. All of these things made Yu Ruifeng re-evaluate Leng Shiqi again and again. Now, after getting along with him for a while, he found that Leng Shiqi was really capable. For example, in today's matter, if it was an ordinary supervisor, he would have already panicked, but Leng Shiqi was able to see through the deep meaning of it. Yu Ruifeng asked again, then why do you think they did this? Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, whether their king died accidentally or not, they just want to take this opportunity to postpone the investigation indefinitely. Even when the new king ascends the throne, they can deny this account. That's right. Yu Ruifeng's expression at this time was very calm, and there was no longer a bellyful of anger like before. I didn't expect you to see it so clearly, but in this way, our investigation mission will be considered a failure. Not only that, I'm afraid we won't even have a chance to suppress the pro-war faction. We can only stay in this post as guests for a while, and then go back with our tails between our legs. Leng Shiqi's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light, and said, not necessarily. Huh? Yu Ruifeng raised his eyebrows, showing a look of interest. From what you said, it seems that there is still a chance. Do you have any ideas? Leng Shiqi first quietly glanced at Yuan Song. In fact, the one discussing this with Yu Ruifeng should be Yuan Song, the supervisor. In fact, Ling Shiqi was stealing the limelight a bit. However, Zhou Tsang didn't seem to be dissatisfied at this moment, so Ling Shiqi continued, right now, the Zhou Road King's throne is vacant. Zhou Road is different from our Thunder Dynasty, the succession system of the throne succession system, which means that both the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction have a chance to ascend the throne. And we can secretly support the pro-war faction and let their people sit on the throne, which is equivalent to completing the mission. As for the investigation matter, we can use it as a bargaining chip, we can take the opportunity to gain more benefits. After Ling Shiqi finished speaking, Yu Ruifeng's eyes flickered, but before he could say anything, Yuan Song said, that's not right. Let's not talk, with our abilities halls, the sect S hall. Zhu, SSS wills will not let's to say, they will S's will S Zhu Roads's halls was Zhu Road Country's stabilizing force. The reason why Zhu Road Country was able to exist until now wasn't because of how wealthy its citizens were, nor was it because of how elite its army was. It was because there were several Sky Origin stage experts in the hall. It was just that these Sky Origin stage experts didn't reveal themselves, and it had been many years since they showed themselves. They never asked about Zhu Road Country's internal affairs, even if the king was replaced, they wouldn't care. They would only show themselves when Zhu Road Country was facing a calamity. And what Yuan Song was worried about was the hall's hall. The reason why these experts didn't interfere in the fight for the throne was because no matter who the throne ended up in, it would still be someone from Zhu Road Country. If they secretly supported the pro-peace faction to suppress the pro-war faction, it wouldn't be a big deal. But if they wanted to influence the candidate for the throne, it was very likely that the experts from the hall would be drawn out. At that time, they would probably have to stay here forever. Yu Ruifeng continued, Yuan Song's words aren't without reason. Ling Shiqi said, I've considered this point before, but what if someone else begged us to get involved? Yuan Song thought for a while and asked, you mean, the pro-peace faction will take the initiative to ask us for help? That's right. Ling Shiqi nodded and said, the pro-war faction and the pro-peace faction are equal in power. It's impossible for them to quickly crush the other side. And we're that extra power that suddenly appeared. Especially Lord Yu, who has the strength of Heaven Man Unity stage, he's definitely a crucial power. Also, the pro-war faction's Prince Gus has come, the pro-peace faction's people will probably come soon. Yuan Song could be the great supervisor, so he definitely had the ability. He thought carefully and said, yes, Prince Gus's attitude was very humble when he came. I think he also had the intention of giving us face. When the right opportunity comes, he will definitely contact us secretly. Yu Ruifeng's eyes were always on Ling Shiqi. He was a little surprised that Ling Shiqi could make this chaotic matter so orderly so quickly. So he admired Ling Shiqi even more. He said, you're all right. Being able to find a breakthrough in the chaos and continue to complete the mission is the ability and quality that we Dark Thunder Guards should have. It's just that the information we have is still too little. Pass down the order, let all the Dark Thunder Guards use all means to inquire about the king's death and the details of the two factions. Yes. Ling Shiqi and Yuan Song answered at the same time, then left Yu Ruifeng's room. In fact, Ling Shiqi didn't have much to do, because he only had Guan Feihong as his subordinate, and he had already sent him out early in the morning. So he went back the way he came and continued to cultivate. However, it was a pity that there were too many people in this post house. Someone could come back to find him at any time, so he couldn't calm down to open up the spirit vein. The whole day passed just like that. What made him a little puzzled and worried was that Guan Feihong still hadn't returned. Ling Shiqi immediately opened his supercilious eyes. There was no Guan Feihong's spiritual aura within a radius of 7 to 8 miles. Where did he go? He muttered softly, but he wasn't too worried. No matter what, Guan Feihong's cultivation was at the late stage of the spiritual pulse realm, and he was a blood-clothed assassin of the blood-clothing pavilion. It wouldn't be so easy for something to happen to him. But then he was slightly stunned. Because he unexpectedly found Imo Huaisho's spiritual aura near the post house. What does Imo Huaisho want to do by approaching the post house? What is her identity in Zhulu country? Ling Shiqi's thoughts turned quickly. He locked onto Imo Huaisho's aura and found that her figure was slowly approaching someone. That person was Jill. Chapter 355. Ever since Jill was captured at Ai Ming Mountain, he hadn't had a good life. Now, he was brought here as a witness and was locked up in the woodshed of the post hostel. There were even 2 Spirit Pulse Realm Dark Lightning emissaries guarding the door. Dark Lightning emissaries were all elites of the Dark Lightning Guards, but these 2 people didn't know that a figure had already sneaked into the woodshed. After Jill's arm was cut off and his cultivation was sealed by Ling Shiqi, they didn't torture him. But his face was ashen, as if he had nothing left to live for. Because he was very clear that as long as the Dark Lightning Guards handed him over to Zhu Lugua, he would only end up dead. But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. This person was wearing a mask and was shrouded in a layer of faint black gas. Once this person appeared, he released a few goo worms into Jill's nose and mouth. This person was Imo Huaisho in disguise. Jill immediately felt as if his throat was being squeezed tightly, making it hard for him to breathe. I ask, you answer. Otherwise, you will die from being eaten by 10,000 goo worms. Imo Huaisho's voice was as cold as ice, making one shiver. As a citizen of Zhu Lugua, Jill obviously knew how tragic it was to be eaten by 10,000 goo worms. He instantly nodded. Imo Huaisho asked coldly, who instructed you to go to Zhu Lugua to collect iron essence? Jill's eyes flickered. He said, it's Prince Gus. Nonsense. Imo Huaisho shouted. I think you really want to try the taste of goo worms. Imo Huaisho moved his finger, and the goo worms in Jill's body immediately started to devour his flesh. But his throat suddenly couldn't make any sound. Jill was in so much pain that his whole body twitched. After a few breaths, his whole body was soaked in sweat. Imo Huaisho said coldly, still not telling the truth. Jill's eyes were filled with fear and panic. I am telling the truth. Good, very good. Seems like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Imo Huaisho prepared to torture Jill again, but who knew that Jill actually closed his eyes and put on a look of defiance. Seeing this, Imo Huaisho also felt that it was a little tricky. She didn't expect Jill to be a tough nut to crack. Right now, she had sneaked in secretly. There were people from the Dark Thunder Guards guarding outside the door. If she made any noise, they would be alarmed. Once she was discovered by the Dark Thunder Guards this time, the Dark Thunder Guards would definitely guard Jill strictly in the future. It would be impossible for her to sneak in again. Just when Imo Huaisho didn't know what to do, a voice came from outside the door. My 2 colleagues, Jill seems to know his place. So it's Lord Lu. Greetings, Lord Lu. Don't worry, Lord Lu. Jill knows his place. That's good. Thank you for your hard work. I have something to ask Jill. Please open the door. Imo Huaisho, who was in the woodshed, recognized the voice the moment he heard it. It was Lu Xingji's voice. He's here too. That's right, he was the one who captured Jill and ruined the plan to collect refined iron. He should be here. However, when she heard that he was about to come in, she secretly cursed her bad luck. She lowered her voice and said to Jill, You're a smart person. You should know what to say and what not to say. Let's talk when we have time. Then, the black gas around Imo Huaisho surged and his figure disappeared. Creak. The door of the woodshed was opened. Ling Shiqi walked in and closed the door. He saw that Jill was sweating profusely and looked exhausted. However, he didn't show any surprise. Jill was also terrified. He didn't know how to explain to Ling Shiqi. However, he had to thank Ling Shiqi for coming to find him. This was equivalent to saving his life. However, Ling Shiqi's next sentence made him horrified. Ling Shiqi said, "Jill, I saved your life. How do you think you should repay me? What are you talking about? I don't understand." Jill was still stubborn. Ling Shiqi nodded lightly and said, "You think I don't know what happened here? Then let me guess. Why would you rather be bitten to death by the goo worms than tell me the truth? There must be someone or something important that fell into the hands of the mastermind." Hearing this, Jill's eyes narrowed slightly. Although he recovered quickly, Ling Shiqi's sharp senses still caught it. Ling Shiqi waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in your matters. I'm also not interested in the mastermind. After all, I'm from the Thunderstorm dynasty and can't be bothered to get involved in your Zhu Lu country's mess. However, there's a piece of news that you might not know." "What?" Jill's heart skipped a beat. He felt that what Ling Shiqi was going to say next would definitely be shocking. Ling Shiqi said in an indifferent tone, "Your king is dead." "The king is dead." This sentence was as simple as saying, "I've eaten," in Ling Shiqi's mouth. However, in Jill's ears, it was like a sudden clap of thunder. He was instantly stunned. At this moment, Ling Shiqi's eyes suddenly emitted 2 rays of 5 colors. He seized the moment when Jill was distracted and used both the soul-scaring technique and the mind-stealing technique at the same time. A great fear struck Jill's soul and instantly pushed his mind to the verge of collapse. Ling Shiqi asked in a tempting voice, "Were you ordered to sneak into the Western Desolate Province?" "Yes." Jill's eyes were empty as he said weakly. "Were you the one who secretly bribed Li Xianyang of the Profound Yang sect to collect large amounts of refined iron for you?" "Yes." "Were you forced to go to the Western Desolate Province to do this?" "Yes." At this point, Ling Shiqi hesitated and asked tentatively, "Was it the state elder and state teacher who asked you to go?" Jill's face suddenly showed a painful expression. He actually almost broke free from the illusion. However, he failed in the end. He opened his mouth and said one word. "Yes." Hearing this answer, even Ling Shiqi was shocked. Just now, he originally wanted to ask if it was Prince Gus who sent him. However, he immediately remembered that Mo Huaishou secretly came to interrogate Jill in the middle of the night. This meant that Jill probably had a huge secret. On the surface, what Jill did was indeed in line with the actions of the pro-war faction. Therefore, including Ling Shiqi and all the Dark Thunder Guard subconsciously thought that the 2 princes were the masterminds behind this. However, Ling Shiqi had a sudden inspiration to change his tone, and he had really discovered a shocking secret. It turned out that the people who sent people to the Western Desolate Province to collect refined iron were actually the 2 leaders of the Peace faction. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.